Audiobook, Why Donald Trump? By Milco Baute. Written and published in 2018. Introduction. I do not intend to present a partial or partisan perspective, as I am neither a Democrat nor a Republican. I am simply a conservative Christian writer and free thinker who seeks truth through research and analysis. My goal is to contribute to public knowledge by examining events from a neutral point of view, striving to avoid the bias that arises when we judge solely from our own perspective. As the saying goes, when emotion controls reason, many mistakes are made. To understand the world clearly and contribute constructively, we must set aside bias and analyze issues objectively. The human brain is akin to a computer's hard drive. When it becomes infected by viruses, such as disinformation, cultural traditions, or mediocre education, it begins to malfunction, losing its capacity for rational thought. Over time, these influences corrupt our thinking, leading us to accept falsehoods as truths. The mainstream media, which I often refer to as instruments of disinformation, are major culprits in this regard. Their partiality and ideological agendas distort information, focusing more on sensationalism than on education or truth. Television, in particular, has devolved into a medium that thrives on gossip, violence, and scandal, damaging rational thought and fostering division, hatred, and societal unrest. This disinformation breeds intolerance and chaos, undermining the principles of democracy, law, and societal values, especially in a free and democratic nation like the United States. Mediocre leadership has exacerbated these issues, eroding the foundational principles of freedom, democracy, and cultural identity. The 2016 U.S. elections brought these divisions to the forefront, revealing unprecedented levels of animosity. Both supporters and detractors of Donald Trump exhibited behaviors that undermined respect, order, and civility, creating rifts among political parties, families, and individuals. Such divisions mirror those found in totalitarian regimes, where tolerance and rights are disregarded. Hatred, as the Bible warns, is akin to murder. 1 John 3 verse 15 states, "Anyone who hates a brother or sister is a murderer, and you know that no murderer has eternal life residing in him." It is my hope that this book inspires reflection among those consumed by animosity, whether directed at Republicans, Democrats, or others. We are all part of the same society and must learn to coexist respectfully. God loves all people but will not excuse wrongdoing or condone evil, Numbers 14:18. Much of the hatred and division stems from a misunderstanding of Donald Trump's words and actions. Unlike traditional politicians, Trump approaches governance as a businessman, often speaking candidly without concern for political correctness. While he is not flawless, he has demonstrated patriotism and a commitment to prioritizing American interests, addressing issues such as illegal immigration, organized crime, and national security. A president's duty is to protect their nation and its citizens, and Trump's nationalist stance, though controversial, aligns with that responsibility. Critics argue against nationalism, but prioritizing one's own country is not inherently wrong. The United States cannot be expected to solve the world's problems or bear the burden of every struggling nation. The primary responsibility of any leader is to ensure the safety and prosperity of their own people. The threats posed by terrorism, religious extremism, and organized crime require a strong, focused response. These enemies are resourceful and relentless, united by their desire to destroy free societies like the United States. In this context, the media and entertainment industries have exacerbated the challenges, spreading misinformation and fostering division. Many outlets are controlled by ideologically driven entities, manipulating narratives to serve their own agendas. Celebrities, too, have become complicit, politicizing art and entertainment. To combat this, individuals must actively reject such influence by seeking education and truth, rather than succumbing to sensationalism and propaganda. The opposition to Trump, fueled by a coalition of internal and external adversaries, is unprecedented. Extremist groups, leftist activists, and corrupt elites have united to undermine his presidency, fearing his promises to expose and eliminate corruption. This media-driven war against Trump has destabilized the nation, creating an era of paranoia and hostility. Symbols of national identity, flags, monuments, and even historical teachings, are now under attack, often in the name of tolerance. Such movements reflect a society increasingly detached from its principles and values. Despite these challenges, I remain hopeful that truth and reason will prevail. However, the growing rejection of foundational values suggests that the world is heading toward greater judgment. The United States, as a beacon of freedom and democracy, must resist these destructive influences, preserving its heritage and upholding the principles upon which it was founded. The Trump era, as they call it, is rather the era of paranoia, where everything the Republican Party and all that Trump does now is bad, where they offend the flag, and the national anthem, just because they are against the government and its president-elect. They feel offended by history, statues, or national monuments of the past and use freedom of expression to ask for the removal of that historical heritage and everything that might offends, be monuments, history books, songs, hymns, teachings, anything that mentions God, Jesus, and do not be surprised if you hear that they ask to eliminate Christmas because it is an offense for non-Christians in a multicultural country. We have arrived at those extremes, and perhaps one day all will return to normal when another corrupt liberal, populist Democrat of the left returns to take control and be elected President of the United States of America because the world loves its own. This world is ripe and ready for the judgment of the God of heaven. God's will. Everything that happens under the sun, in the physical, material, visible, and invisible, spiritual, world, is under the designs of God. Nothing happens if it is not God's will, perfect or permissive. Therefore, just as it was the will of God that Barack Obama was president for 8 years from 2008 to 2016, it is also God's will that Donald Trump be the president-elect for the next 4 or 8 years, if God so requires. God is the one who puts and removes kings or rulers, whether for judgment, protection, blessing, or curse. We can do nothing about it, even if we cry, shout, condemn, curse, or become aggressive. The best we can do is to control emotions and accept democracy. Daniel 2 verse 21, And he changeth the times and the seasons, he removeth kings, and setteth up kings, he giveth wisdom unto the wise, and knowledge to them that know understanding. Romans 13 verse 1, Let everyone submit to the governing authorities, since there is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are instituted by God. As a Christian who legally immigrated to the United States, I have always identified with a conservative perspective. This country welcomed me, respected my rights, and allowed me to experience freedoms that my country of origin, Cuba, had stripped away. Here, I found the liberty to express myself, assemble freely, and pursue prosperity in progress. When I arrived intending to stay, I became eligible to apply for U.S. citizenship after 5 years as a legal resident. In 2001, after becoming an American citizen during George W. Bush's presidency, I registered with the Republican Party, believing it to be the only party aligned with conservative principles and values. However, as I became more informed and observed the corruption within both major parties, I chose to affiliate with the Constitution Party of America. This party is firmly rooted in conservatism and led by Christian leaders, embodying biblical principles. It became clear to me that neither George W. Bush nor subsequent Republican candidates like John McCain or Mitt Romney were true Christians, despite their claims. Without a genuine fear of God or integrity, they failed to align with the conservative and moral standards I value. In the 2016 elections, Senator Ted Cruz initially appeared to be the most convincing conservative candidate. However, his occasional dishonesty cost him votes. While none of us are without flaws, and it is not our place to judge the hearts and intentions of others, honesty and integrity are essential qualities in leadership. Despite my personal preferences, I prioritize voting with conviction and conscience. Though the Constitution Party is a minor party in a system dominated by Republicans and Democrats, I am committed to its mission, conserving and defending the U.S. Constitution, preserving traditions and customs, and upholding biblical principles. The Constitution Party was one of 6 prominent parties in the 2016 election, alongside the Republican, Democratic, Libertarian, and Green parties. While I am not a fan of Donald Trump, I have read many of his 19 published books and followed his career. As a businessman, Trump exemplifies qualities such as resilience and ambition, which I admire in entrepreneurs. However, his personality, marked by arrogance, rudeness, and self-centeredness, is far from what I personally value, as I hold humility and kindness in high regard. Yet, we all have flaws, and upon analyzing Trump's leadership and the times we live in, I believe he is the right leader for this moment. Despite his imperfections, I see his presidency as part of God's plan to address the harm caused by the previous administration and to extend his mercy in a world that continues to deteriorate. Donald Trump's imperfections, his perfectionism, egocentric tendencies, and arrogance, are evident. He is not without fault, but he has demonstrated a willingness to listen, a fear of God, and a commitment to taking the country in the right direction. Trump prioritizes America's welfare, as every president should, and has assembled a cabinet of capable and God-fearing leaders. Under his leadership, biblical studies and prayer have returned to the White House, reflecting a renewed focus on seeking God's guidance. Among Trump's key priorities, which align with God's perfect will, are protecting the Christian church, upholding the nation's principles and values, and restoring what was eroded by the previous administration's unconstitutional and immoral policies. Trump has also focused on rescuing the economy by reducing expenses, deficits, and inflation, while working to make America a great and powerful nation once more. Additionally, his unwavering support for Israel is of prophetic significance. As God's chosen people, Israel represents the fulfillment of divine prophecy, and its protection aligns with biblical teachings. Let us not forget that salvation comes through the Jews, as Jesus Christ, the Son of God, Savior, and eternal life, was himself a Jew. While Trump is not a perfect leader, he is the man for this critical moment in history. His leadership, grounded in prioritizing America's interests and guided by faith, reflects a commitment to restoring the country's values and protecting its freedoms. For me, saving the republic and aligning with God's purpose far outweighs personal or party loyalty. Genesis 12 verse 3, I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you, and all the families of the earth will be blessed in you. Galatians 3 verse 8, and the scripture, foreseeing that God would justify the Gentiles by faith, preached the good news to Abraham, saying, in you all nations will be blessed. John 4 verse 22, you worship what you do not know, we worship what we know, because salvation comes from the Jews. Donald Trump plays a significant role in the times we live in. As we face challenges to God's plan and order, it is important to recognize that there is a spiritual battle at play. The devil, knowing his time is limited, works tirelessly to disrupt God's plans, seeking to destroy his people, both the nation of Israel and the church of the Lord. God, in his mercy, extends grace to this nation, a beacon of progress and development in the world, and, by extension, to the world at large. If it was within God's permissive will for Barack Obama to serve as President of the United States for 8 years, it may have been to awaken and correct us, to draw us back to him through prayer and humility. This period may have been necessary for us to recognize our need for God and to call upon him to save the land we inhabit. God hears prayers, and his intervention protects us from looming dangers and the enemies of America and civilization. Similarly, God allowed George W. Bush to serve as president during a time when the worst terrorist attack in history, September 11, 2001, was imminent. Bush was the right leader for that moment, making decisive choices to demonstrate the strength of the United States to its enemies. Before this tragedy, New York City was in a state of spiritual decline. However, the events of 9/11 sparked a spiritual awakening. People humbled themselves, turned to God, and sought his guidance through prayers and supplications. While not everyone in New York or the United States acknowledged their sins or their need for God, this tragedy stirred the Christian church from its complacency, reigniting a spirit of prayer. Unfortunately, this renewal was short-lived. With the election of President Obama, the nation began to accept sin, humanism, modernism, and societal degeneration. Obama declared that the United States was no longer a Christian nation, abandoned key allies, made deals with enemies, and undermined traditional morals and customs. He also took actions that alienated the Christian church, shifting rights away from some to favor others, and openly identified as a Muslim by tradition. His affiliation with the Muslim Brotherhood, a radical organization seeking to infiltrate governments worldwide to suppress Christian traditions and establish Islamic dominance, including Sharia law, had far-reaching consequences. Under Obama's leadership, racism, which had largely diminished in the United States, was reignited. He financed and armed terrorist groups to oppose the Syrian government, inadvertently empowering ISIS, the most brutal terrorist organization in history. ISIS massacred entire communities, invaded countries, and infiltrated the United States and Europe under the guise of refugee movements, causing global chaos. Furthermore, Obama's alliance with the Muslim Brotherhood facilitated the establishment of 22 Muslim camps within the United States, allegedly training terrorists. These are realities that the mainstream media, influenced by the leftist elite, often conceal from public view. Despite these challenges, God remains sovereign, extending His mercy in guiding those who seek Him. It is crucial to remain vigilant, prayerful, and steadfast in faith, trusting in God's plan for redemption and justice, even amid turbulent times. 2 Chronicles 7 verse 14, If my people, who are called by my name, shall humble themselves, and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, and will forgive their sin, and will heal their land. Isaiah 1 verse 9, If the Lord of hosts had not left us a small remnant, we would have been like Sodom, and like Gomorrah. How do we pretend that God intervenes, protects us, and frees us from evil by sending angels from heaven? Not precisely. When His people, the Christian church, humble themselves, seeing the danger, the evil, and the degeneration, God moves things in our favor. So, He has always done this. He chooses humans to save His people, and nations, and extend His mercy to this chaotic and depraved world. For indeed, if we still exist and have not been judged as Sodom and Gomorrah, it is by the mercy of God. Just as He chose Noah to save the human race in a depraved and chaotic ancient world, also to Moses to save His people, delivering them from the slavery of Egypt, which represents this world with its traditions and sins, like many others throughout the history of mankind, He has now chosen Donald Trump. Why is the United States of America so important to God? Simply because God keeps His promises. This nation was founded by immigrants who came from another continent to worship and serve God freely, the God of Noah, of Abraham, of Isaac, of Jacob, of Joseph, of Moses, of Joshua, of Gideon, of Ruth, of Jeremiah, of Isaiah, of Daniel, of Samuel, of David, and of so many others to date. They came and blessed the land, trusting their God, who keeps His promises. This is the birth of this nation dedicated to God, the Creator, and which has survived over the years. This nation is where there are more Christians in the world, thanks to religious freedom and the help and protection the Christian church has had from the government, which was about to be changed with Obama and then with Clinton. The Christian church in the USA has helped the whole world, especially poor countries, through the donations made, thanks to the religious freedom, the Christians broadcast and television in the United States. The Christian church has financed, planted, and built churches, schools, shelters, homes, hospitals, etc. in many countries of the Third World, in addition to all the resources in medicines, clothes, supplies, and others. The United States has always grown as a powerful military and economic nation to watch over the world, protect other developed nations, and strongly condemn the violation of human rights in all parts of the world, through sanctions, financial embargoes, and sometimes military interventions. Do you believe that God does not use force against force? Yes, God uses men in human ways. He created mankind for that reason, apart from having a personal relationship with His Creator and watching over His creation on earth. But we have an enemy in common, the enemy of souls, whose time will end soon, and as he knows it, he, the devil, has descended with power knowing that he has little left, creating a more chaotic world, due to the sin that reigns. Revelation 12 verse 12, Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe for the earth and for the sea, because the devil is gone down unto you, having great wrath, knowing that he hath but a short time. In today's ideological war in the United States, two extremist groups have emerged among the population, the vicious and the vitiated. The vicious include media manipulators and partisan agents of disinformation, ideologically aligned with the left. Their mission seems to be campaigning against the very democracy they enjoy, the same democracy that elected Donald Trump as president. Their campaign of hatred and slander stems from an inability to accept defeat, free will, or democratic outcomes. The vitiated, on the other hand, are those who consume this disinformation without question. They hear what aligns with their biases, believe untruths, and speak on matters they do not fully understand. These individuals, fueled by even the smallest dose of hatred, are quick to protest destructively, destroy property, commit crimes, and even resort to violence. In this era of paranoia, good is called evil, and evil is called good. Conservatives are demonized, and the Republican Party is falsely branded as racist, fascist, and tyrannical, even though reality paints a far different picture. For instance, during Barack Obama's presidency, it was widely accepted, even applauded, when he deported nearly 3 million undocumented immigrants, not just criminals, but also hardworking individuals seeking better lives for their families. Obama also separated families, accused and threatened Israel, and provided financial support to America's adversaries, including Iran, the Palestinians, and Islamic extremists. His administration's rhetoric fostered hostility toward law enforcement, undermining those who protect honest citizens by enforcing the law. Obama's public statements often victimized those who resisted lawful orders while painting law enforcement as oppressors. Ironically, statistics show that more African Americans have been killed by black police officers than by white officers. So, who, in this context, is truly racist or fascist? Yet now, these same critics decry a white, non-liberal president who enforces immigration laws and deports individuals who cross the border illegally, violating the law and often using false identities. The media and left-wing narratives want us to believe that the fight is against immigrants, but this is far from the truth. The fight is against crime, drug trafficking, human trafficking, identity theft, disorder, terrorism, and Islamic extremism, forces that threaten human rights, security, and freedom. There is nothing wrong with protecting one's citizens or securing one's borders, as every other country in the world does, particularly when facing dangerous enemies who kill indiscriminately. This debate is not about blindly supporting a controversial figure like Trump, whose arrogance and unfriendliness may repel many. Nor is it about supporting one political ideology over another. It is about common sense. And that is precisely what I support and defend: common sense, patriotism, freedom, the Constitution, the culture, the history, the customs of this nation, and above all, the future of my children. Those who come to this blessed nation should integrate into its society, not attempt to change it. As an immigrant who respects the laws and principles of this country, I speak from experience. I came to the United States not to live as I did in Cuba or any other third world or Latin American country, but to embrace life in the most powerful and free nation on earth. Before arriving, I learned the English language in Cuba, knowing that one day I would leave. Honestly, had my only option been to come here illegally, I would not have done so, because I have never wanted to live outside the law, especially after having a personal encounter with my Creator and deciding to serve Him. Unfortunately, many people today act and speak emotionally, without thinking critically, researching thoroughly, or informing themselves correctly. In doing so, they perpetuate the currents of hatred, mediocrity, and paranoia that dominate modern American discourse. These individuals are among the vitiated I mentioned earlier. The 18th-century Cuban writer, poet and revolutionary José Martí said, "Ignorance kills the people, that is why it is necessary to kill ignorance." This quote is similar to the biblically in Hosea 4 verse 6, "My people perish for lack of knowledge." As a free thinker, free citizen, Christian and conservative, that is what I support and defend. I prefer a Cyrus king than a Jezebel. What does the Bible say about King Cyrus, who is prophetically compared to Donald Trump? King Cyrus of Media and Persia was a pagan ruler, but Jehovah God of Israel called him his anointed one and took him by the right hand to fulfill his plans with his people and the world. God also calls Cyrus his shepherd. Isaiah 44 verse 28 says of Cyrus, that saith of Cyrus, "He is my shepherd and shall perform all my pleasure," even saying of Jerusalem, "She shall be built," and of the temple, "Thy foundation shall be laid." The Almighty had a plan of restoration and construction for Israel, manifesting His glory to all nations through King Cyrus, whom He would bless in all his undertakings, since this monarch would announce and proclaim Jehovah as the one and true God of all the earth, although he would never convert from his idolatries. Cyrus was an instrument of God to fulfill His will at a decisive moment in the history of Israel and the world, but it was nothing more than that, an instrument. Now we are in the most exciting moments in the history of humanity, where the Antichrist, the rapture of the Church, and the arrival of the Messiah Savior can be sensed by all the events that are affecting all nations. The period of Donald Trump's government might be the last chance for the Church and the world to be saved. Some people turn their lives to obedience, and others to convert. It is possible that after the legislature of Donald Trump, and with the arrival of a new president, the United States and the entire world will sink into complete chaos, the Great Tribulation, where the Church will not live it. You who are a believer, but do not live the gospel, meditate seriously on this and totally change your attitude. You who are not believers, repent and be baptized in the name of Jesus to be saved, because there is little time left. Donald Trump must be respected, not because of what he has done or said, or because of what he is or has, but because it is very probable, for me it is, that he is the anointed pastor of God to fulfill His purposes in these times, as King Cyrus was in his time. The Church must enjoy discernment to pray in the will of God. There are many Christians who are cursing the new president very lightly in their clumsy rush, without knowing that they may be opposing God's plans by bringing a curse on their life. The new president has many detractors inside and outside the United States who make his government very difficult. The provocation reigns on all sides with the intention that he loses his nerves and makes some mistake that can be taken as an excuse to accuse him and throw him out of the presidency. That is why many analysts believe that it is very possible that his term of office does not end. What is certain and evident is that this man is magnifying the name of God and Jesus as we had not seen for a long time in this nation, which was always very favorable and sensitive to the God of Israel. These events that relate the president to the Lord are very similar to what happened to King Cyrus, of whom the Lord prophesied with the words that we will present below, the same that can be applied to Donald Trump, if, as it seems very probably, this is the man whom God will use in these final times to show His glory to the whole world, before the great tribulation that will ravage the earth. Hear the prophecy of God to King Cyrus and by allusion to Donald J. Trump. Isaiah 45 verse 4-7, "For Jacob my servant's sake, and Israel my chosen, I have called thee by thy name, I have surnamed thee, though thou hast not known me. I am Jehovah, and there is none else, besides me there is no God. I will gird thee, though thou hast not known me, 6 That they may know from the rising of the sun, and from the west, that there is none besides me, I am Jehovah, and there is none else. I form the light and create darkness, I make peace, and create evil, I am Jehovah, that doeth all these things." Obviously, Donald Trump is a man who fulfills what he promises and accomplishes what he proposes because he has shown it, and that is what led him to the presidency. One of the many campaign promises that Donald Trump has made is that he will move the U.S. Embassy in Israel from its current location in Tel Aviv to his new location in Jerusalem under the 1995 Embassy Law of Jerusalem. By doing this, the United States will recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and will therefore trigger the war of Psalm 83 as found in the Bible. They have said, "Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent, they are confederate against thee. Psalm 83 verses 4-5. Because it is Jerusalem, what the Bible calls the child of God's eyes, is why the real battle will be fought. Why do you think the Palestinians have always rejected the so-called two-state solution? Because the solution requires Jerusalem and the Temple Mount to stay with Israel, and the Muslims will not allow it. They want Jerusalem for the same reason that the Antichrist fights the Battle of Armageddon. Because Jerusalem is the place where Jesus returns, and where he will rule for 1,000 years. Jerusalem is the reason for all conflict, all the fighting, all the past wars, and the next war. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. And in that day, will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people, all that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. Zechariah 12 verses 2-3. This election will usher in an era of incredible fulfillment of the Bible's prophecy. It is not a coincidence of any kind that Donald Trump will be 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days of age on his first day in office. It's not luck, fortune, chance, or karma that beat its 16 competitors for the nomination. Donald Trump is a man of God for a moment like this, and we are living in the days of visible realization of biblical prophecy. Jerusalem was chosen by the Almighty as the capital of the nation of Israel. There is no other city like Jerusalem on the whole earth since there have been innumerable important biblical events. King David expressed his joy and enthusiasm by going up to Jerusalem to worship the highest God, the God of Israel, with the following words, I was glad when they said unto me, Let us go into the house of the Lord. Our feet shall stand within thy gates, O Jerusalem. Psalms 122:1-2. God chose Jerusalem as his personal city. His authority over her is eternal, and in Jerusalem, his redemptive plan regarding the human being will be fulfilled. It is the only place that God refers to as, my city, Isaiah 45 verse 13, and more frequently as, my holy mountain, Isaiah 11 verse 9, 56 verse 7, 57 verse 13, Ezekiel 20 verse 40, Joel 2, 1, 3:17. Because Jerusalem is the city where God has put his name, it is often called the Holy City, Nehemiah 11 verse 1, Isaiah 52 verse 1, Revelation 11 verse 2. God loves Jerusalem more than any other place, and he selected it to establish his own home. His foundation is in the holy mountains. The Lord loveth the gates of Zion more than all the dwellings of Jacob. Glorious things are spoken of thee, O city of God. Psalm 87 verse 1-3. For the Lord hath chosen Zion, he hath desired it for his habitation. This is my rest forever, here will I dwell, for I have desired it. I will abundantly bless her provision, I will satisfy her poor with bread. Psalm 132 verses 13-15. Today there are 7 nations that want to declare that Jerusalem is not the capital of Israel but of Palestine. They want to divide the lands of Israel. Jerusalem is the eternal capital of Israel that has a proven Jewish history for 3,000 years. It is the city that does not move but remains forever, Psalm 125 verse 1. Refusing to accept Jerusalem as the capital of Israel is accepting that there has never been a Jewish connection with this city. This makes the Bible null and false. It is a war against the Word of God. Rejecting the Jewish presence in Jerusalem is human madness. The Messiah will come to face all the enemies of the truth. They will not escape on the day of judgment. Joel 3 verse 2, I will also gather all nations, and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations, and parted my land. The Bible says that Jesus the Messiah will return to defend his own people. Jesus was, is and will forever be the Lion of Judah, one of the 12 tribes of Israel. There will be many victims of the Antichrist government, who will deny the God of the Hebrews as the only eternal God. Even though Israel established its capital in Jerusalem with the founding of its modern state in 1948, many countries, including the United States, have established their embassies in Tel Aviv as part of a refusal to recognize the annexation of the eastern part of Jerusalem on the part of Israel and the unification of the city after the victory of the Jewish state in the Six-Day War of 1967. On October 23, 1995, Congress passed the 1995 Embassy of Jerusalem Law. This law passed by the Senate required that the American Embassy be moved to Jerusalem before the 31st of May, 1999. But the law was never implemented by the opposition of former Presidents Clinton, Bush and Obama. Those who oppose moving the embassy to Jerusalem argue that it will harm the so-called peace process. The fact is that the Hamas terrorist government in Gaza and the Palestinian Authority do not want peace or recognize the existence of Israel and Jerusalem as their capital. President-elect Donald Trump since his campaign has promised to move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, assuring supporters that he has no intention of breaking his promise, saying, "You know I'm not a person who breaks promises." And so, it has been, Jerusalem has been constituted the capital of Israel by the Lord's will, as prophetic fulfillment and because it has always been since ancient times. Whoever opposes, criticizes, or curses that decision, is opposing the perfect will of God and quarreling with the Creator. Israel's prophetic watch of God is warning us that the time of the Gentiles is over and the restoration of Israel, the children of Abraham, begins. Fake news. What is imposed is repugnant, and when it is repugnant it is rejected. The partials and partisan mainstream media on the left began a campaign of hatred and slander against Trump and the Republican Party from the beginning of the presidential campaign until the day another Democrat takes power again. That is obvious, and this is another reason that brought Donald Trump to power. We are living in the paranoia era, and this 2016 election has shown the dung and garbage of many people. And the one who has neurons and reasons consciously realizes that the Democratic Party is no longer the left-center that characterized it, but the extreme left, proving to be ideologically socialist and not precisely democratic, though some want to mix the names. When, with hatred and slander they try to destroy the democracy of a country, we find ourselves with an ideological imposition. Hate is toxic and more contagious than love, and as I said before, there are people who only need a minimum dose of hate to insult, slander, destroy, and even kill. Hate is a poison that damages not only the mind but the entrails and does more harm to the one who propagates or promotes it. And call it whatever it is called, karma, judgment of God or consequences of sin and evil, we are seeing how those who are sowing that hatred, fall in their very traps today. Whether due to corruption scandals, sexual harassment scandals, accidents, diseases, suicides, etc. That is how celebrities, politicians, journalists, etc. have fallen. There are consequences according to the Word of God. Proverbs 26 verse 27, whoever digs a pit, for another man's feet, will fall into it, and he who rolls a stone, up a hill to do mischief, it will come back on him. Psalm 7 verses 15 and 16, he made a pit and dug it and has fallen into the ditch which he hath made. Psalm 9 verse 15, the nations have fallen into the pit they have dug, their feet are caught in the net they have hidden. Psalm 10 verse 2, in his arrogance the wicked man hunts down the weak, who are caught in the schemes he devises. Psalm 57 verse 6, they spread a net for my feet, I was bowed down in distress. They dug a pit in my path, but they have fallen into it themselves. Ecclesiastes 10 verse 8, whoever digs a pit may fall into it, whoever breaks through a wall may be bitten by a snake. And for all those who do and spread iniquities will continue to fall, no matter what party they are, I believe it, I know, I am sure, since God moves things for protection, blessing, or judgment. But the ungodly, the fanatical, and the stubborn will never give their arm to twist, and will not recognize their mistake, sins, or evil, because for them, whether being individuals, companies, organizations, or institutions, the world is finite and limited only to their interests and their cosmos or truth. But people are fed up with that vice, partisan, ideological fanaticism, with so much immorality, so many lies, so much hatred and division. And I can say for certainty, that many Democrats got tired of that. Some at first believed all the fake news and lies, then they realized and were fed up that this country is taking a course of division, destruction, and evil, promoted by the press and television media. And I say so, because, from November 2016 to May 2017, I was transporting people in my car, from one place to another through the app Uber. I was making a minimum of 20 trips a day. I met many people, some preferred to remain silent during the trip, but most of them talked for the time they traveled, which could be from 10 minutes to an hour or more. And the topic of conversation was usually the presidential elections, Donald Trump, Clinton, the misinformation, and media paranoia. I spoke with many Democrats, independents, and citizens who preferred not to vote, but almost all agreed on the facts and the reality that we are living in nowadays. Some acknowledged that the Democratic Party has degenerated, and even many of those who voted for Obama no longer voted for Hillary Clinton. And this is what the Bible declares. Proverbs 10 verse 12, hatred stirs up conflict, but love covers over all wrongs. Proverbs 10 verse 21, the lips of the righteous nourish many, but fools die for lack of sense. Proverbs 10 verse 28, the prospect of the righteous is joy, but the hopes of the wicked come to nothing. Proverbs 10 verse 29, the way of the Lord is a refuge for the blameless, but it is the ruin of those who do evil. Proverbs 10 verse 32, the lips of the righteous know what finds favor, but the mouth of the wicked only what is perverse. Proverbs 11 verse 3, the integrity of the upright guides them, but the unfaithful are destroyed by their duplicity. Proverbs 11 verse 5, the righteousness of the blameless makes their paths straight, but the wicked are brought down by their own wickedness. Proverbs 11 verse 6, the righteousness of the upright delivers them, but the unfaithful are trapped by evil desires. Proverbs 11 verse 8, the righteous person is rescued from trouble, and it falls on the wicked instead. Proverbs 11 verse 9, with their mouths the godless destroy their neighbors, but through knowledge the righteous escape. Many people, even those with no political affiliation or interest in politics, are growing tired of the constant negativity, baseless accusations, and disparagement of individuals, presidents, or groups. This criticism is not limited to news coverage, it has seeped into art and sports, arenas that have become heavily politicized, much like in a communist regime. Patriotic symbols like the national anthem and the American flag are insulted, traditions, history, and culture are degraded, and hatred is increasingly normalized. Unfortunately, this has turned the United States into the subject of ridicule worldwide. Many nations no longer respect America, and much of the blame lies with the disinformation media, which has abandoned the professional ethics of true journalism. Visual messages have a stronger and more lasting impact on the brain than spoken words. Television, which once served as a tool for information and entertainment, has transformed into a platform that promotes lies, immorality, gossip, sensationalism, and negativity. Many journalists have strayed from professionalism and impartiality, becoming political activists and instruments of hatred and manipulation. For this reason, I no longer trust mainstream news. Instead, I rely on alternative sources that are rooted in facts and evidence, avoiding speculation. Unfortunately, the media focuses on morbid and false stories because they sell more effectively, appealing to an audience accustomed to such content. People are hypnotized in front of their TVs, drawn to crime, violence, immorality, and negativity. In contrast, I prefer books. Books educate and inspire, whereas excessive television consumption dulls the mind. Research and psychologists agree, the more time people, especially children, spend watching television, the lower their intellectual engagement and academic performance. Experts recommend that children minimize their TV exposure to improve their cognitive abilities and educational outcomes. Violence breeds violence. Hate is a poison that damages the mind and can lead to catastrophic consequences. What is the purpose of so much negativity and hatred? Even if Donald Trump were a poor president, every leader, good or bad, has done some good during their tenure. Why, then, Does the media focus exclusively on speculating about his perceived flaws while ignoring the achievements he has made for the good of the country and the world? This relentless negativity has caused frustration, even among some Democrats, as I've personally observed. Yet the media wants us to believe that everyone detests him and that no one supports him. If that were true, how did Trump win the presidency in a democratic nation where more than 60 million people voted for him? Such claims are baseless. In fact, alternative platforms like social networks and YouTube channels often provide more balanced reporting, an embarrassment to mainstream outlets, even though some of these platforms are influenced by globalists and progressives. Trump has accomplished more for the United States in a single year than many Democratic presidents did during their entire terms. That is why he was elected, not because he is a politician, but because he is known as a man of his word. Despite his flaws, he has worked to fulfill the promises he made during his campaign, even if his style and approach are unpopular with some. As an entrepreneur, Trump thinks strategically, with a cool head, as businessmen often do. He presented his plans clearly during his campaign and debates, providing substance, unlike the Democratic candidates, who focused primarily on criticizing him rather than outlining actionable solutions. Do these critics have nothing negative in their own lives? Have they never made mistakes? Of course, they have, likely far more than what they criticize Trump for. We must be cautious when judging or condemning a person who fears God and strives to act with integrity, even if we dislike their personality or approach. No one is perfect, but at least Trump has demonstrated that he loves his country and wants the best for it. His actions, more than his words, reveal his dedication to serving the United States. Matthew 7 verse 2, For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Matthew 7 verse 5, You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. I believe that those who hate so much, so in the mediocre minds, hypnotizing them with their repetitive and baseless stupidities, will fall into their own hole and drink the poison of their own evil. Obama's legacy. Although Hillary Clinton is an experienced politician, intelligent and eloquent, there is no doubt, when she said in 2016, that she would follow the same policy as Obama, who had left a sad legacy and a great debt to this country. Most of American citizens were not willing to continue this legacy. Although Clinton had about 3 million votes more than Trump, the truth is that Trump did not win by the number of people who voted but by the number of electoral colleges, so, he won by the states with a wide advantage. This is how democracy works in America. This now displeases the Democrats and their followers, and they cry, scream, and stomp the way the elections are held, but when Obama won in 2008 and 2012, it did not seem bad. On the contrary, Obama won because of that. But every time a Republican wins, they start crying loud, because they do not accept defeat. To tell the truth and knowing by the alternative news and the conservative media, people who voted with false identity, have been arrested and prosecuted. And despite the traps and inflated votes, those 3 million differences would be the opposite, because it is proven, although not with an exact number. There were millions of false votes in favor of the Democratic candidate. Even cheating could not win the 2016 elections, and obviously, it was a miracle that Trump won. And evidently, the legacy left by Obama did not favor Clinton at all. Barack Obama is considered by U.S. voters to be the worst president in the United States since World War II, according to an opinion poll published in July 2014 by Quinnipiac University. The 33% of American voters think that Obama is the worst president of the 12 that the United States has had since that conflict, while 28% opts for the Republican George W. Bush. The most valued president is Republican Ronald Reagan with 35% of the vote, followed by Democrat Bill Clinton with 18% and John F. Kennedy with 15%. Only 8% of U.S. voters consider Obama the best president of the United States since World War II and 1% to George W. Bush. 40% of respondents consider that Obama has been a worse president than Bush, while 39% believe that he has been better. 45% of Americans surveyed think that if Republican Mitt Romney had won the 2012 election, the country would be better off, while 36% believe it would be worse. At the time of conducting this survey, the University of Quinnipiac, located in Hamden, Connecticut, surveyed between 24 and 30 of June to 1,446 registered voters distributed throughout the country, said in a statement. Of course, it all depends on the glass with which you look. Some people see Obama as a great leader, but only those who hold on to that doctrine of social dependence, of state control, those who believe in corrupt and liars politicians, in vain promises, in beautiful words and in the partisan media that the left manipulates. One of the first things that the left used to do was to control the mainstream media, sponsoring them and financing them in their favor. It is their most effective weapon. Many see Donald Trump as a hero, others as a villain, but in the chapter ahead, where I cite the achievements of Donald Trump in his first year in office, the difference is clear. The other reason that Trump was elected as president is that the voters did not want the legacy left by Obama with the continuation of Hillary Clinton. Since I like to inform myself, investigate, listen, and analyze well about politics and the politicians to whom I am subject, in part, because I was born and raised in a communist country whose strategy was to keep the population uninformed, I followed the speeches, statements and policies of President Barack Obama for his 8 years. When I realized the proposed changes in political ideology during his presidential term, which would precede Hillary Clinton later, I can give my opinion of his achievements as president. Legalize even more immorality, making the American nation sin, causing a curse to the land according to the scriptures. This nation emerged thanks to the Christian pilgrims who came from Europe to praise and please God with freedom, and the fathers of the homeland founded this most powerful nation in the world, based on principles and values. Things that the leftist liberals called progressives have wanted to pervert. Imposing laws that harm those who do not want to follow the current immorality of society. Isaiah 1 verse 16 to 20, wash and make yourselves clean. Take your evil deeds out of my sight, stop doing wrong. Learn to do right, seek justice. Defend the oppressed. Take up the cause of the fatherless, plead the case of the widow. Come now, let us settle the matter, says the Lord. Though your sins are like scarlet, they shall be as white as snow, though they are red as crimson, they shall be like wool. If you are willing and obedient, you will eat the good things of the land, but if you resist and rebel, you will be devoured by the sword. For the mouth of the Lord has spoken. Created the Obamacare plan, a method of control over the population that has not been very helpful, because people who already had health insurance, now had to pay more for their premiums, and those who received the cheap health plan from Obama, must pay from their pockets, hospitalization, surgeries, treatments and medications, since it did not cover it. Medical insurance is a monopoly in the U.S. and that will not change. The Obamacare plan only serves as an intermediary and is not an insurer. Most clinics and hospitals do not accept Obamacare insurance. Perhaps, the main purpose was to make it fail, in order to the government to take control of health, eliminate monopoly and socialize health, and then continue to socialize or centralize other things, like education, economics, public services, culture, sports, etc., as we all know the Democratic Party is trying to do. That is how a socialist system starts in order to take full control. He made alliance and negotiations with enemies of the United States, causing chaos not only in the Middle East but Europe, Africa and America. This brings therefore, greater violence in both American territory and worldwide. He did not react to the human rights of the persecuted and countries in conflict, abandoned the opposition, and allowed impunity for crimes against humanity. His passivity and contemplation caused many to lose confidence in the United States. The worst terrorist group in history emerged in Syria and Iraq and gained power and control of the region more and more since the Obama administration did not do anything. There is evidence that ISIS was financed by the U.S. government during the Obama period, which is still under investigation, according to some sources. Abandoned the cause of freedom in Cuba and Venezuela, never imposed sanctions, but, on the contrary, negotiated with these communist dictatorships unconditionally. He has rejected Israel, leaving them alone in their fight against terrorism, since Israel is hated by Islam and Obama identifies himself with that religion. He has accused Israel instead of supporting them, falling into the religious demagoguery of those who want to dominate the world with their religion and ideology. He has created division and hatred within the nation, allowing extremist groups and minorities to retaliate against the authorities that are protecting the citizens of this country. Awakening in America the racism that was already eliminated. Used the media financed by the liberals to give false information, create more chaos, more hate, and more division, during his presidential period and after. Controlled income, pensions, and refunds of taxpayers' taxes, especially conservative or Republicans' voters. It has allowed the increase of inflation even more, because as prices rise, more taxes are paid, and the government wins more. This causes a poor quality of life and an increase in poverty in the U.S. He tried to change the official religion of the country, Christianity, arguing that the United States was no longer a Christian country, but multicultural. Choose government officials who belong to radical religious societies and groups to have a majority of voters who accept and proclaim laws against American customs and culture, according to their own statements. He raised and fought for constitutional changes to fulfill promises approved by his voters that, "It's time for change." An old slogan used by the communist Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, his effort and all his collaborators or sponsors, was focused on changing or imposing laws that fit their ideology. Increased the national debt. When Obama left, the national debt was $19.6 trillion. This is hardly noticeable, because the American economy is going through a period of recovery, but if this deficit would continue, the consequence would bring the collapse of the economic and would be disastrous. And that is what Donald Trump has been focused to fix, and thanks God he is doing well. Other opinions. Sean Hannity, Obama farewell can't hide a disastrous legacy. President Obama spent much of Tuesday's farewell address boasting about his success, but the facts paint a much different picture. The truth is, he oversaw the precipitous decline of the American economy, ran through a disastrous health care law, and presided over a thoroughly failed foreign policy. The last 8 years have brought the lowest labor participation rates since the 1970s, with 95 million Americans out of the labor force. The so-called recovery has been the weakest one since the 1940s. We have the lowest home ownership rate in 51 years, despite mortgage rates artificially kept at record lows. Over 11 million more Americans have been on food stamps since he became president, and more than 43 million Americans now live in poverty. 1 of every 6 men between 18 and 34 are either in prison or out of work. And by the time he leaves office, President Obama will have added more to our national debt than all the other presidents before him combined. When President Obama finally leaves office, the national debt will be almost $20 trillion. Prior to taking office, the man who has tacked on $9.3 trillion to what our children and grandchildren owe once said the then $9 trillion national debt was unpatriotic. Then, of course, there's President Obama's assault on the business community through his burdensome regulations. Consider this: the estimated cost of regulations under Obama is a staggering $873 billion. That includes a shocking $344 billion cost in Environmental Protection Agency regulations alone. All told, the number of new regulations that have been finalized under President Obama checks in at almost 3,000. When it comes to jobs, President Obama is always bragging about how many he's created, but facts are stubborn things. In the past 8 years, America has lost more than 300,000 manufacturing jobs and, although the president doesn't mention it, America had a global trade deficit of over $732 billion last year. Yet another drag on the American economy is Obamacare, his signature legislation and crowning achievement. Remember when Obama repeatedly told you that under his plan you could keep your doctor, you keep your plan, and that it would drive down overall health costs to the point the average family would save $2,500 a year? And how Obamacare would actually reduce the deficit? No matter how we reform health care, we will keep this promise to the American people, Obama said on June 15, 2009. If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor, period. If you like your healthcare plan, you will be able to keep your healthcare plan, period. Well, millions of people lost their doctors and their insurance plans, but that was just the start of the Obamacare disaster. This year, Affordable Care Act premiums are exploding by 25% on average. In Arizona, they're jumping by a stunning 116%. Deductibles are so high that even if Obamacare recipients pay their premiums, they can't afford to use their coverage in many cases. As for the average American family saving $2,500 a year on health care, the exact opposite has happened. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, the increase in healthcare costs for employer-sponsored benefits since 2008 is now $5,462. That is a 43% increase. It just keeps getting worse. The choice of healthcare providers available through Obamacare is evaporating. In states like Alabama, Alaska, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Wyoming, people buying on the exchanges have a single insurer to choose from. It's because insurers are now pulling out after losing massive amounts of money. So much for choice. So, what about foreign policy? Obama gave Iran, the #1 state sponsor of terror, $150 billion and allowed them to continue to spin their centrifuges. And of course, he paid a ransom for 4 U.S. citizens Iran held prisoner, reversing long-standing policy and signaling to the world that there's money to be made from taking Americans captive. Obama drew a red line when he warned Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad not to use chemical weapons. When Assad crossed it, Obama did nothing. Partly as a result, that country's civil war continues and has created a massive worldwide humanitarian crisis. In Egypt, Obama gave Mohamed Morsi, the former Muslim Brotherhood head who became president but is now in prison for murder, F-16s, tanks, and $1.5 billion in taxpayer funds. In Libya, the president helped overthrow Gaddafi, and that country has since fallen into chaos, creating a hotbed for ISIS. And speaking of ISIS, back 2014, President Obama called the world's most dangerous terrorist organization, the JV Team. The next year, just hours before the horrific ISIS attack in Paris that killed 130 people, Obama assured us that ISIS was contained. ISIS was never a junior varsity team and certainly was not contained. In fact, it seized vast parts of Iraq because Obama created a vacuum when he pulled U.S. troops out too early for purely political reasons. There's no doubt President Obama's legacy is one of severe damage to the country. The president-elect has promised to clean up this mess and he has a very clear plan to do it. He will create millions of new jobs, lower taxes, reform the tax code, negotiate better and fairer trade deals, cut burdensome regulations, encourage multinational corporations to bring back trillions of dollars, promote energy independence, repeal and replace Obamacare, build a border wall, vet refugees and appoint originalist justices to the U.S. Supreme Court. President Trump won't be afraid to say radical Islam while destroying ISIS. He will drain the swamp and reduce the size of government, eliminate bureaucratic waste, fraud, abuse and send control over public education back to the states. There's reason to believe real, lasting change is coming our way. It will be up to all of us to hold Trump and his team accountable. Adapted from Sean Hannity's monologue on Hannity, January 10, 2017. Sean Hannity currently serves as host of Fox News Channel's FNC Hannity. He joined the network in 1996 and is based in New York. The testimony of Hillary Clinton. There was much talk, speculation and spread about the crimes of Hillary Clinton and the Clintons in general, corruption, illicit enrichment, the association with radical Islam, the financing of Al-Qaeda, which became ISIS, illicit negotiations, collusions, and treated with enemies and a complicity with the death of 4 officials of the United States government in Benghazi, due to her negligence or complicity. We all heard or saw in the news about the emails that were erased by her and her staff, evidences of her corruption and complicity. At least 30,000 missing emails. Above all, there are four things that most displeased the population, the voters, and even Democrats. 1. She called deplorables to those who did not agree with her, those who would not vote for her, because of her politics and ideology. 2. She stole the votes of Sanders, which made his followers very angry. 3. She promised even more drastic changes than Obama's, emphasizing that she would follow Obamacare policy, abortion, gay marriage, gun control, and state control. 4. She clearly expressed that she would allow the entry of 1 million Muslim refugees. These reasons and others put the population on alert, which caused an independent media war against Hillary Clinton and her policy. People who did not plan to vote, went out to vote, registered Democrats changed their vote, and registered independents or minor parties decided to vote for Donald Trump. And I do not speculate, I met more than 20 people who were not Republicans, some were not even associated with a party at all and went out to vote for Trump. They wanted to avoid a worse chaos about coming to the U.S. after 2016. What would have happened if Hillary Clinton were president of the USA? Regardless of globalization and that U.S. was coming into decay from the Bush administration. Regardless, the economy was growing, and there were more jobs, and more trade, during the Obama administration, due to the period of economic recovery was exactly during the Obama administration. Regardless of that, immigration has increased, as well as deportations, the debt and deficit are much higher than before Obama. I will tell you in my opinion what else would happen with the Clinton administration. Historically, populist liberals, leftist Democrats like her, are corrupt, not only because of the fact of money but because they promote sin or immorality, causing the degeneration of the morals and customs of American society. They are liars, and the proof is that Hillary Clinton has been investigated by the FBI. She criticized Donald Trump for being rich and not having done anything for the poor, when she is a rich woman thanks to corruption, and Donald Trump has done more for the poor, minorities, and even illegal immigrants indeed, than any other politicians, because thanks to everything he has built he has given employment to hundreds of thousands including minorities, averages people and even undocumented. The rich feed the poor, because they generate sources of employment. She also accused him of wanting to deport millions of people, when during the Obama administration to which she was a party, almost 3 million illegal immigrants were deported, and not precisely criminals. Obama's administration has deported most illegal immigrants in the history of the United States, and it is not the fault of the Republicans, as they always want us to believe. A clear example of a corrupt and liar Democrat president was her husband Bill Clinton, who was prosecuted for lying in court due to a sexual slip while he was a president. Unique in the history of the U.S. Also, these populist liberals have always been friends with the enemies of the United States, anti-Americans, communists, Muslims and dictators. So, what we would have with Hillary Clinton would be the same as Obama and even worse. Why do I think it would be worse? Because in Clinton's agenda was receiving 1.5 million immigrants or Muslim refugees from Syria and other Islamic nations, which would be extremely dangerous for national security, since terrorists have always infiltrated as refugees in the first world countries that receive them. We already see clearly how a single person of them can kill 100 innocent people, among them, children, and people who have nothing to do with politics. Because terrorists intend to use religion to kill as many as they can, dominate and control. So, if one of them can kill 100, then 100 of them can kill 10,000, and 1,000 of them can kill 100,000. And then they will come out with the fact that we live in a new era, and we must accept living with terrorists and die at any moment. Maybe they just want to reduce the population, especially Christians, causing chaos and disorder, to bring the New World Order by force. Just speculating. It would continue the depravity and degeneration of American society, and its influence would affect many countries, persecute people who have principles and values, if they do not want to marry homosexuals, in case they are notaries or priests, as had happened since Obama allowed homosexual marriage, taking away the right to some to give to others. Transgenders could use the bathroom of a woman or a man, depending on how they felt that day. In the gender ideology, minors can choose how they feel. If they are not comfortable with their natural sex, they have the right to choose to be what they want. But if the gays had rights, so, the exhibitionists, bigamists, polygamists, and pedophiles would also demand their rights, and they would have to accept it, because it is a free country. Therefore, do not be surprised, but in this chaotic and perverted world, they would have legalized the marriage between humans and animals and the procreation of these. There were rumors that parents could not demand anything from their children, even if they were minors, and would prohibit or ban parents from taking their children to church because it is a violation of human rights. Sorry, but no one has to tell me how to educate my children and what values to teach them. Euthanasia would be legalized as well as legalizing abortion for any reason, even on the same day of birth, because it is a woman's right to take away the right to live her child if she does not want it. But we know the darkness behind this, and it is simply a sacrifice of babies or human beings to Satan, as this kind of ideology, societies, and globalist elite usually are identified with Lucifer or Satan. They would continue to consent and trade with dictators, in order to extend their dictatorship and continue to repress their countries, and the poor have no hope of a better quality of life, and they would continue emigrating to the US or first world countries. Because Democrats need voters, mediocrats, and people who can easily control, offering free things and health. They would continue to increase the national debt, creating economic and financial chaos. Inflation would continue to rise. Clinton said that it would increase the minimum wage, but she did not have a plan to sustain that, because that would also increase prices, and even if we earn more, each year people would be poorer. To those governments of the left, it is better to increase inflation because that is how people pay more taxes. So, do not believe much in their kindness and in the struggle to eradicate poverty. That is exactly what a populist does, promise things without meaning, that they will not even fulfill. Health is another issue. There is no free medical care indeed, and if there are some clinics that attend for free, it does not cover exams, surgeries, or treatments, if there is no medical insurance to support it. Obamacare was a failure because the government does not have free clinics and hospitals. They trade with insurance companies for low rates, which ultimately does not cover, and the only purpose is to increase the burdens on the poor, who live day by day, imposing more bill for them to pay per month. That's why I say, it is better to pay the Obamacare penalty than to pay for health. So, with the Clinton administration, we would continue with the same issue, penalties, imposition, and mandatory for all to have their health insurance. The violence in the world would increase considerably because the US abandoned its allies and befriended the enemies of civilization during Obama's period, and also contemplated the abuses of human rights around the world. In conclusion, zero security, depravity and corruption, increasing inflation, deteriorating quality of life, deportation like always, freedom of expression dangerous, more disinformation due to the script the liberal mainstream media, to defend their interests. The violence in the world would increase, and the massacres by Islamic terrorists would be daily news, due to the weakness and indifference the liberals have shown. Probably it would be more fabricated mass shootings to ban the Second Amendment that leads to disarming the population. If you feel happy with a conservative candidate, I suggest you not vote, rather than vote for a populist, corrupt, immoral, and liberal traitor. Romans chapter 1, verse 32 says that not only is guilty the one who sins, but the one who approves sin, because the one who approves sin, participates in it. That is why I believe that the Lord, God of creation, has extended his mercy in these last times, to fix these disasters and immoralities that the Democrats have left us, allowing more people to be rescued from darkness to light, that we may have hope and prolong our existence a little longer in a ripe world ready for judgment. In chapter 10 of Joshua, in the Old Testament, it is described how God extended his mercy and extended the day to Joshua to face the Amorites who came together to fight against the people of Gibeon for making peace and covenant with the Israelites. Joshua ordered the day to stop in order to kill his enemies because they were many and the fight was tough. This is how God extended his mercy to him, extending one day for them could survive and prevail in that battle. This is an analogy of what God does for his people when things seem lost and go from bad to worse. But indeed, scientists have realized that by counting the days in a computer program, it shows hours lost in history, almost a whole day. Coincidence? No, the stories of the Bible are not fabling or fantasies, they were real and happened. These things happened and were told so that we could learn from it, increase our faith, and know more about our God and the wonderful things that He can do. So, we can live confidently on His promises, since He is in control of everything. Hillary's 22 biggest scandals ever. Does America really want 2 Clintons for price of 1 back in White House? During his 1992 campaign for the presidency, Bill Clinton was fond of promising America, "You get 2 for the price of 1, indicating Hillary Clinton would act as his co-president. But the nation got much more than it bargained for, as the top power couple brought a load of baggage with them into the White House from their days in Arkansas. After the Clintons moved into the presidential mansion, the political scandals multiplied, from use of the IRS and FBI to target political opponents to stalking and harassing subjects of Bill Clinton's sexual advances and even attempts to loot taxpayer-funded items from the White House. Americans also witnessed capers such as Travelgate, Chinagate, Filegate and Pardongate. Bill Clinton's sexual escapades and subsequent impeachment by the U.S. House of Representatives on charges of perjury and obstruction of justice consumed more than a year of American public life and bitterly divided the nation. In the years since the memorable Clinton presidency, Hillary has brought America Emailgate and the Benghazi scandal, among others. New developments in the Clinton Foundation scandals emerges almost daily. Now, it's Hillary's turn to be president, according to her Democrat supporters. But in 2015, America is still apparently suffering from Clinton fatigue. Results from a Quinnipiac poll published in April revealed between 49 and 56% of voters in 3 significant swing states, Colorado, Virginia and Iowa, believe Hillary is neither honest nor trustworthy. Even former California Democratic Party Chairman Bill Press told WND that controversies surrounding Hillary should convince members of his own party that an uncontested coronation of Clinton as the party's 2016 nominee for the White House is a very risky idea and should encourage other Democrats to throw their hats in the ring. Senator Marco Rubio, a Republican candidate for president, said Sunday he believes voters will reject Hillary because of the cloud of constant scandal she brings to the political process. Rubio told Fox News Sunday, unfortunately, both under her husband's presidency, her time in the Department of State, her campaign for the president last time and even now, there seems to be this cloud of constant scandal and things that distract us from the core issues of the moment. Hillary's drama could become a distraction, Rubio warned, at a time when the stakes are high for America in the 2016 election. I just think that at this hinge moment in our history, where we are asked to make a transition from the past into this new future, with all the challenges and the opportunities of our time that we really, the American people are not at a point now where they are going to be supportive of more drama surrounding the political process, he said. In 2003, ABC News' Barbara Walters referenced numerous Clinton scandals from Whitewater to Travelgate and the death of Hillary's law partner Vince Foster in an interview with then-son Clinton. Walters asked Hillary, "How did you get in this mess where your whole credibility is being questioned?" Hillary's response, "Oh, I ask myself that every day, Barbara, because it's very surprising and confusing to me." With Hillary making another run for president, don't get caught up in the lies and spin. In Hillary Unhinged, in her own words, find out who the true Hillary is with this raw and humorous collection of quotes that pitilessly underscores her hypocrisy. With the prospect of another 2-for-1 Clinton presidency looming, is America ready for a repeat of the Bill and Hillary drama in the White House? If, as psychologists say, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior, then a fresh look at the top 20 scandals involving Hillary is in order. 1. Clinton's turn IRS into Gestapo. Few federal agencies are more feared and loathed by Americans than the Internal Revenue Service, especially when corrupt presidents abuse the power of the IRS to harass and exact revenge on political enemies. As WND has reported, during Bill Clinton's terms in office, IRS audits were conducted against individuals and groups who caused problems for the administration. Several prominent conservative groups found themselves facing IRS audits following their criticism of the president and his policies. Among the conservative groups targeted for audits were the Heritage Foundation, the National Rifle Association, Concerned Women of America, Citizens Against Government Waste, National Review, American Spectator, which was burglarized 3 times, the National Center for Public Policy Research, the American Policy Center, American Cause, Citizens for Honest Government, Progress and Freedom Foundation, David Horowitz's Center for the Study of Popular Culture and the Western Journalism Center. Individuals singled out for audits during the administration included Clinton paramours Jennifer Flowers and Liz Ward Grayson, sexual assault accusers Paula Jones and Juanita Broaddrick, fired White House Travel Office Director Billy Dale and attorney Kent Masterson Brown. Fox News' Bill O'Reilly, an outspoken critic of both Bill and Hillary Clinton, said he was audited 3 times during the Clinton presidency. A 1996 survey by the Washington Times could not identify a single liberal public policy organization that had been audited during the entire Clinton administration. 2. Covering Bill's dirty deeds. The Clintons have been accused of hiring private investigators to not only dig up dirt on perceived adversaries, such as Juanita Broaddrick, the woman allegedly raped by Bill, and other abused women such as Jennifer Flowers, Kathleen Wiley and Paula Jones, but to stalk, scare and threaten them. Wiley asserts Hillary was behind a campaign of intimidation and harassment against her that fit a pattern employed against numerous other women whose claims of sexual impropriety or assault by Bill Clinton threatened the couple's political fortunes. As WND reported, Wiley and her husband, Ed, were Democratic activists who founded Virginians for Clinton and helped send Bill and Hillary to the White House in 1992. While serving as a volunteer in the White House and facing financial hard times, Wiley says she met with Bill Clinton in the Oval Office to request a paying position. But instead of getting help, she says, she was subjected to nothing short of serious sexual harassment. Distraught, Wiley fled Clinton's presence, only to discover that her husband Ed had committed suicide that same tragic afternoon. Later, she was drawn, unwillingly, into the Paula Jones lawsuit, the Ken Starr investigation and impeachment proceedings. Wiley, author of the 2007 book, Target, Caught in the Crosshairs of Bill and Hillary Clinton, has claimed the Clinton tag team used mob-style intimidation campaign to keep her silent, even purportedly breaking into her home to steal her memoirs of the events. Despite Bill's 20 years of alleged and admitted extramarital relationships, Hillary famously came to his defense shortly after the Monica Lewinsky affair broke in 1998. Asked about the accusations, the then First Lady said, "Certainly, I believe they're false. Absolutely." Then, in a memorable interview with the Today show's Matt Lauer, she explained years of accusations by women such as Wiley, Jennifer Flowers and Dolly Kyle Browning. "Bill and I have been accused of everything, including murder, by some of the very same people who are behind these allegations," she said, pointing to a vast right-wing conspiracy. "So, from my perspective, this is part of a continuing political campaign against my husband. What makes a book about Bill and Hillary Clinton so explosive that someone would steal it?" Kathleen Wiley tells America the shocking story in her book, Target, Caught in the Crosshairs of Bill and Hillary Clinton. Later, however, when placed under oath, Bill Clinton admitted to an affair with Flowers, as he did with Lewinsky. But Hillary's actions, Wiley contends, indicated by word and deed that her main concern was to ensure her husband's proclivities didn't ruin their political careers. In her book, Wiley cites sources who contend Hillary began engaging private investigators during their time in Arkansas so she could head off any repercussions from her husband's behavior. The first to be dispatched were her own father and brother when she committed to marry Bill, according to author Jerome Levin in The Clinton Syndrome. Bill had left Yale University for Arkansas to teach law, and she went to work in Washington, D.C. When Bill was governor, Hillary sent out a group of investigators known as the Truth Squad, to discourage many of her husband's lovers from going public. 3. Looting the White House. When the Clintons left 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in 2001, they reportedly vandalized and looted the White House. Hillary tried to ship furniture to the Clintons' personal home in Chappaqua, New York. The Clintons came under fire when they reportedly tried to take $190,000 in gifts and furnishings from the presidential mansion. Additionally, the General Accounting Office, an investigative arm of Congress, reported that damage, theft, vandalism and pranks did occur in the White House complex during the presidential transition from Bill Clinton to George W. Bush, including the theft of a presidential seal. According to the General Accounting Office, the cost of the White House vandalism reached about $14,000 and included $4,850 to replace computer keyboards with damaged or missing W keys. The agency said some of the destruction was intentional, including glue smeared on desks, broken furniture, offices full of trash and graffiti in a men's restroom stall that disparaged Bush. There were also missing doorknobs, medallions and office signs. During their time in the White House, the Clintons also reportedly auctioned off and sold taxpayer-financed government goods and services in exchange for political campaign contributions and personal profit. Among the items sold by the Clintons, which Judicial Watch uncovered in various lawsuits, and the media and Congress in their investigations, were 1. Seats on overseas trade missions, 2. Export licenses for high-technology sales to Communist China and elsewhere, 3. Commissionerships and judgeships, 4. Rides on Air Force One, 5. Overnight stays in the White House's Lincoln bedroom, 6. Graves at Arlington Cemetery, 7. Meetings with key Clinton-Gore administration leaders, and other favors. 4. Filegate, FBI files on GOP enemies. The Clinton duo was involved in a scandal known as Filegate, in which they illegally obtained FBI files on perceived adversaries, most of whom served in previous Republican administrations. In an effort to discredit the women who charged President Clinton with sexual misconduct, personal files and papers were illegally obtained and released. The courts found, under the Privacy Act, that the privacy of Linda Tripp and Kathleen Wiley had been violated, a Judicial Watch report said, citing just a few of more than 900 relevant files. Judicial Watch said Hillary had been linked directly to the center of the controversy. The scandal was first detected by the House Government Reform and Oversight Committee, which investigated the Clintons' Travelgate caper. The committee found that the FBI files had been improperly accessed by Craig Livingstone, a former bar bouncer Hillary had hired to work in the White House counsel's office. However, Hillary called the whole affair a completely honest bureaucratic snafu. In Whores, Why and How I Came to Fight the Establishment, Judicial Watch and Freedom Watch founder Larry Klayman details the stunning incompetence and corruption of Bill and Hillary Clinton. 5. Hillary's Muslim Brotherhood princess. Huma Abedin, who served as Hillary's longtime deputy chief of staff and has worked with her for nearly 20 years, has known ties to the Muslim Brotherhood, a group bent on destroying Western civilization from within, and other Islamic supremacists. As WND has extensively reported, the Muslim Brotherhood and Islamic supremacist connections not only extend to Abedin's mother and father, who are both deeply tied to al-Qaeda fronts, but to Abedin herself. As WND reported, a manifesto commissioned by the ruling Saudi Arabian monarchy places the work of an institute that employed Abedin at the forefront of a grand plan to mobilize U.S. Muslim minorities to transform America into a Saudi-style Islamic state, according to Arabic-language researcher Walid Shubat. Abedin was an assistant editor for a dozen years for the Journal of Muslim Minority Affairs for the Institute for Muslim Minority Affairs. The institute, founded by her late father and currently directed by her mother, is backed by the Muslim World League, an Islamic organization in the Saudi holy city of Mecca that was founded by Muslim Brotherhood leaders. The 2002 Saudi Manifesto shows that Muslim Minority Affairs, the mobilizing of Muslim communities in the U.S., to spread Islam instead of assimilating into the population, is a key strategy in an ongoing effort to establish Islamic rule in America and a global Sharia, or Islamic law, in our modern times. WND reported Abedin also was a member of the executive board of the Muslim Student Association, which was identified as a Muslim Brotherhood front group in a 1991 document introduced into evidence during the terror financing trial of the Texas-based Holy Land Foundation. At her father's Saudi-financed Islamic think tank, WND reported, Abedin worked alongside Abdullah Omar Nazif, who is accused of financing al-Qaeda fronts. Nazif is deeply connected to the Abedin family. WND was the first to report Huma's mother, Sulia Abedin, was the official representative of Nazif's terror-stained Muslim World League in the 1990s. Shubat previously reported that as one of 63 leaders of the Muslim Sisterhood, the de facto female version of the Muslim Brotherhood, Sulia Abedin served alongside Nagla Ali Mahmoud, the wife of Muslim Brotherhood figure Mohamed Morsi, Egypt's now ousted president. Sulia Abedin and Morsi's wife both were members of the Sisterhood's Guidance Bureau, Shubat found. WND also recently reported Abedin used emails hosted on Hillary's private server while she was Secretary of State. 6. Vince Foster's 1993 death. Vince Foster was Deputy White House counsel and Hillary's friend and law partner who had connections to the Travelgate and Whitewater scandals. In 1993, Foster was found dead in a park with a fatal gunshot wound to his mouth. As WND reported, his suicide was the subject of much speculation and 3 official investigations. Investigations by the U.S. Park Police, the Department of Justice, the FBI, Congress, independent counsel Robert B. Fisk and independent counsel Kenneth Starr concluded Foster's death was a suicide. However, as WND reported in 2003, one of Starr's key investigators challenged the official line, insisting the probe's result was predetermined, only a few plotters were required to engineer the result, the crime scene was altered and major newspaper editors killed stories by reporters pursuing the truth. The Washington Post reported that federal investigators were not allowed to enter Foster's office after his death, but White House aides entered Foster's office shortly after his death, giving rise to speculation that files were removed from his office. In his 2005 book, The Truth About Hillary, What She Knew, When She Knew It, and How Far She'll Go to Become President, Edward Klein wrote of Hillary's involvement in the effort to remove Foster's files. The night of Foster's death, Hillary launched one of the most shameful and illegal cover-ups of her entire career. She sent 2 of her most trusted White House loyalists, Maggie Williams, the First Lady's Chief of Staff, and Patsy Thomason, who was in charge of White House administration, into Foster's office to retrieve embarrassing and incriminating documents related to Whitewater and Hillary's other personal affairs. While White House counsel Bernard Nussbaum barred investigators from entering Foster's office, Maggie Williams, Patsy Thomason, and Craig Livingston, Hillary's director of White House security, removed armloads of files and loose-leaf binders. In addition, a White House staffer allegedly tampered with the titles of several memos and removed the First Lady's initials in an effort to erase her role in improper behavior. 7. Emailgate, she should go to prison for this. In March 2015, WND reported Hillary kept all her official correspondence as Secretary of State, as well as her personal emails, on a private email server located at her home, instead of using the government-mandated process while serving in the high-appointed position. Her email system was unsecured for months while she used it for government business, and she did not sign a standard agreement when she left office that promised she had left government property behind. The Hill reported Hillary did not encrypt her private email service with a digital certificate for the first 3 months of her tenure as Secretary of State. That was while she was traveling to China, Egypt, Israel, Japan and South Korea. Several present and former members of the U.S. intelligence community said Hillary's private email server was a major security risk, and America, going forward, ought to assume enemies of the state all had access to it. The name Clinton Wright on the email handle meant this was not a difficult find, said John Schindler, a former National Security Agency counterintelligence officer, Investors Business Daily reported. With Hillary making another run for president, don't get caught up in the lies and spin. In Hillary Unhinged, in her own words, find out who the true Hillary is with this raw and humorous collection of quotes that pitilessly underscores her hypocrisy. In April, J. Michael Waller, a longtime consultant to government entities ranging from the Secretary of Defense to the U.S. Senate to the U.S. Marine Corps Warfighting Laboratory, told WND the Russians hack into the U.S. government, and so does any foreign intelligence worth its salt, most likely through Hillary's private server. Waller said Hillary deserves prison time for insisting on an email system that clearly left the nation vulnerable to attack. This is the national security equivalent of drunken driving, he said. She should go to prison for this. When you drink and drive, you know in advance that you're putting other people in danger. Yet, you think because you're so smart or so clever or just don't care, that nothing's going to happen and then something does, so it's your fault. This is precisely what she did on the national security sphere. Hillary gave 55,000 emails from her private email account to the State Department in December. On March 10, Clinton announced she had deleted 30,000 emails she considered personal. She was warned by Congress way back in 2012 against using a private email account for government business, and her response? Silence. 8. Chinagate, sale of high-tech secrets. Chinagate, documented by Judicial Watch, was uncovered by Judicial Watch founder Larry Klayman. Technology companies allegedly made donations of millions of dollars to various Democratic Party entities, including President Bill Clinton's 1996 re-election campaign, in return for permission to sell high-tech secrets to China. Bernard Schwartz and his Laurel Space and Communication Limited later allegedly helped China to identify the cause of a rocket failure, thereby advancing China's missile program and threatening U.S. national security, according to records. In a 2013 column titled, "Proof Hillary Isn't Fit to Be President," Klayman wrote. Not to be outdone by her prior scandals, Hillary masterminded a scheme whereby the Clinton-Gore presidential campaign of 1996 took bribes from communist Chinese banks and their government to bankroll the president's and the Democratic Party's re-election efforts when it appeared, due to their low standing in the polls, that all the stops needed to be pulled out. It was the lawsuit that I brought against Secretary of Commerce Ron Brown, where at Hillary's instruction, he literally sold seats on department trade missions to China and elsewhere, which principally uncovered this. In late 1996 and early 1997, the scandal had burgeoned to such a level that joint congressional hearings were impaneled, ultimately to be shut down when Democrats uncovered illegal fundraising by some Republicans. The two parties, faced with mutual assured destruction, simply took an exit stage left. However, I soldiered on with my lawsuit. And, while I uncovered a lot about Bonnie and Clyde and their Chinese friends, this scandal ultimately took a back seat to the Monica Lewinsky scandal, since the media preferred sex to foreign espionage and graft. Hillary and Bill were ironically saved by Monica, who became the lightning rod drawing attention away to what at the time was perhaps the biggest scandal, Chinagate, in American history. 9. Travelgate, always room for friends. In the Travelgate scandal, the staff of the White House Travel Office was fired to make way for Clinton cronies, including Bill's 25-year-old cousin, who was reportedly promised the position of office director. Hillary allegedly fired 7 employees and gave the positions to her Arkansas friends. According to the Washington Post, there was an effort to award a White House airline contract to a Clinton friend. Also, Hillary reportedly had the FBI investigate the former head of the travel office, Billy Dale, who was fired without notice and removed from White House grounds. Dale was charged with embezzlement but found not guilty of the crime in 1995. He was later audited by the IRS. 10. Whitewater, jail for friends, but not Clinton's. The Whitewater investigation by independent counsel Kenneth Starr began in 1994 with accusations of impropriety against the Clintons and others concerning improper campaign contributions, political and financial favors, and tax benefits. Its initial subject was a failed Arkansas real estate venture involving the Clintons in the 1980s that was linked to the collapse of Madison Guaranty Savings and Loan, a Little Rock savings bank run by the Clintons' Whitewater business partners. Clinton's friends James and Susan McDougal went to jail for fraud. James died while serving his sentence, as did former Arkansas Governor Jim Tucker and municipal judges David Hale and Eugene Fitzhugh. The probe eventually expanded to include the death of Deputy White House Counsel Vincent Foster, the dismissal of White House Travel Office employees, receipt by the White House of a number of FBI files, and the issue of whether President Clinton lied or obstructed justice to hide an affair with White House intern Monica Lewinsky. 11. Landing under sniper fire, in Bosnia. In her March 17, 2008, foreign policy speech on Iraq, then-Sen. Hillary Clinton recalled a trip she made to Tuzla, Bosnia, in 1996. "I remember landing under sniper fire," Hillary said of her visit while she was First Lady. "There was supposed to be some kind of a greeting ceremony at the airport, but instead we just ran with our heads down to get into the vehicles to get to our base." But news footage of her visit revealed her sniper fire claim wasn't just exaggerated. It was completely false. And Hillary had repeated the claims several times, including during her time on the presidential campaign trail in 2007. Rather, Hillary landed on a tarmac and greeted a crowd, including an 8-year-old child who gave her a poem, under no duress. According to the Washington Post, a review of more than 100 news articles revealed no security threats to Hillary at the time. After the 2008 speech, Hillary was asked about her statements, and she stood by them. "There was no greeting ceremony, and we basically were told to run to our cars." Now that is what happened. But, a week later, Hillary told the Philadelphia Daily News that she misspoke. Hillary claimed she had been told there was a threat of sniper fire in the area. The following day, she declared, "So I made a mistake. That happens. It shows I'm human, which for some people is a revelation." 12. Hillary's missing law firm billing records. In 1994, federal investigators subpoenaed Hillary's billing records from her days as a partner in the Rose law firm during the Watergate scandal. The White House said it didn't have 115 pages of files. While Hillary claimed she had a minor role in the affair, the Washington Examiner reported that, when the records mysteriously turned up in the White House in 1996, they showed she met repeatedly with key figures in the scandal. 13. Pardongate, Hillary's Senate contributions. Before Bill Clinton left the White House in 2001, he granted numerous controversial pardons, including to convicted tax evader Mark Rich, whose wife made significant contributions to Hillary's 2000 Senate campaign and the Clinton Presidential Library. The Associated Press reported that Rich had been indicted by a U.S. federal grand jury on more than 50 counts of fraud, racketeering, trading with Iran during the U.S. Embassy hostage crisis and evading more than $48 million in income taxes, crimes that could have earned him more than 300 years in prison. Rich fled to Switzerland in 1983 after his indictment and remained on the FBI's most wanted list until President Clinton pardoned him. Also, Hillary's brothers, Tony and Hugh Rodham, reportedly received large amounts of money from people who were pardoned by Bill Clinton. Hillary said she and Bill were unaware of the scheme. Accuracy in Media reported, Hugh Rodham, Hillary's brother, was taking money and promising access to help get pardons. Two such high-profile cases were those of drug kingpin Carlos Vinali and convicted swindler Glenn Braswell. Rodham received hundreds of thousands of dollars from each, and they were both granted pardons. Rodham was quoted as telling a top White House aide that the pardon for Vinali was very important to Hillary. 14. Hillary's cash cows and 987% profit. In March 1994, it was revealed Hillary, with no previous experience, had made massive profits from cattle futures trading between 1978 and 1979, when Bill Clinton's salary as Arkansas Attorney General had been modest. She reportedly made $99.537 in profit on a $1.000 investment, a 987% profit, in just 9 months because of a highly placed connection at Tyson Foods, which was the largest employer in Arkansas and a big Clinton donor. The New York Times reported, during Mr. Clinton's tenure as governor, Tyson benefited from several state decisions, including favorable environmental rulings, $9 million in state loans, and the placement of company executives on important state boards. The commodities trades were the most successful investment the Clintons ever made. The nearly $100,000 profit enabled them to buy a house, invest in securities and real estate and provide a nest egg for their daughter, Chelsea. The Clinton body count, first published in WND and later circulated by Linda Tripp to Monica Lewinsky, is a collection of names of people associated with Clinton administration scandals who have died mysterious and often violent deaths. Reporter David Bresnahan broke the story of the list during the summer of 1997 while researching his book, Cover Up, The Art and Science of Political Deception. I started looking into all the various deaths of people that were involved in various Clinton scandals, Bresnahan said. I started to investigate the entire picture instead of just one focused event. Nobody out there was putting it all together, he said. If you look at one scandal, you'll find one dead guy. When you investigate all Clinton scandals, you find similarities, you find common tactics, you find common actions, and you find dead people. The list was not just a source of terror among sworn enemies of the administration. It was an even greater terror for those close to Clinton, for those closest, it appeared, died younger and more inexplicably than those on the outside looking in. In his research, Bresnahan came up with more than one list. Not only did I find a list of dead people, but I also found that there are over 100 people who have refused to testify, he said at the time. There is also a list of people who have gone to jail. 45 people have gone to jail, some of them White House staff, cabinet members as well as people from the Justice Department. So many of those lists developed when I started to pursue the big picture. 16. Hillary's radical pal, Saul Alinsky. As WND has reported, the exact nature and extent of Hillary's relationship with radical community organizer Saul Alinsky has long been the subject of speculation and intrigue. The interest has been largely fueled by her suppressed and later released 92-page senior thesis for Wellesley College offering an extensive, largely positive critique of Alinsky and his work. WND recently found that long after Alinsky's death in June 1972, a group Clinton co-chaired maintained a working relationship with Alinsky's main community organizing outfit, the Industrial Areas Foundation, or IAF. The partnership extended into the 1990s and yielded influence over the education policy of the Clinton presidency. Dick Morris, a former top political advisor to Bill Clinton both as governor of Arkansas and as president, noted to WND that education reform is the key issue Hillary Clinton used to propel herself independently to the forefront of Arkansas politics during Bill's governorship. The revelation of how closely linked her efforts were back in the 80s, and have been since, to an Alinsky radical front group is deeply disturbing and expands our understanding of Hillary's fundamental radicalism and commitment to the new left of Saul Alinsky, Morris said. Hillary Rodham in 1965, when she was president of Wellesley College's Young Republicans, shown here with the cover page of her senior thesis from 1969 on radical organizer Saul Alinsky. Hillary was said to have met with Alinsky several times in 1968, when she was writing her thesis. In her most recent memoir, Hillary wrote that she rejected a job offer from Alinsky to instead attend law school. The Hillary-Alinsky relationship received more media attention last September, when the Washington Free Beacon uncovered direct correspondence between Clinton and Alinsky from the archives of Alinsky's IAF. The correspondence dates to the summer of 1971, when the 23-year-old Clinton was living in Berkeley, California, and interning at the law firm Truhaft, Walker, and Bernstein. In a July 8, 1971, letter to Alinsky marked personal, Hillary wrote, "Dear Saul, when is that new book, Rules for Radicals, coming out, or has it come and I somehow missed the fulfillment of Revelation? I have just had my 1000th conversation about Reveille, for radicals, and need some new material to throw at people," she wrote, referring to a 1948 Alinsky treatise on community organizing. The Free Beacon's Alana Goodman noted the letter documents Hillary and Alinsky had kept in touch since she entered Yale and that Alinsky even offered her advice on campus activism. Hillary wrote that she missed their regular conversations and asked if Alinsky would be able to meet her the next time he was in California. "I am living in Berkeley and working in Oakland for the summer and would love to see you," she wrote. "Let me know if there is any chance of our getting together." 17. Hillary laughs about defending child rapists. As WND reported, Hillary explained her defense of a child rape suspect as just part of the job. But she hasn't explained her laughing about his passing of a lie detector test, which destroyed her faith in such evaluations. Once I was appointed, I fulfilled that obligation, she said in an interview with Mumsnet, a UK community of parents providing and sharing information on a variety of subjects and issues. In the video she is asked, as a lawyer, you defended the rapist of a 12-year-old girl, calling the victim emotionally unstable and saying that girls have a tendency to exaggerate or romanticize sexual experiences, especially when they come from disorganized families. Clinton said, "When I was a 27-year-old attorney doing legal aid work at the law school where I taught in Fayetteville, Arkansas, I was appointed by the local judge to represent a criminal defendant accused of rape. I asked to be relieved of that responsibility. But I was not, and I had a professional duty to represent my client to the best of my ability, which I did." He later pled guilty to a lesser included offense. When you're a lawyer, you often don't have the choice as to who you will represent, and by the very nature of criminal law there will be those who you represent you don't approve of, but at least in our system, you have an obligation, and once I was appointed, I fulfilled that obligation. However, she did not address the reports of unearthed recordings in which she almost boasts of knowing of her client's guilt and laughing about the case. The tapes reveal her discussing the case of Thomas Alfred Taylor, then 41, who was accused of raping a 12-year-old in Springdale, Arkansas, on May 10, 1975. "It was a fascinating case, it was a very interesting case," Clinton said on the tape. "This guy was accused of raping a 12-year-old. Course he claimed that he didn't, and all this stuff. I had him take a polygraph, which he passed, which forever destroyed my faith in polygraphs." She laughed at the statement. The Washington Free Beacon report on the recordings also confirmed she was laughing several other times while discussing the case, including when discussing the crime lab's accidental destruction of DNA evidence that tied Taylor to the crime. Published profiles of the case reveal that Clinton's strategy at the time was to attack the 12-year-old. She submitted an affidavit that said she was told the girl was emotionally unstable and was viewed as having a tendency to seek out older men and engage in fantasizing. She claimed the child in the past made false accusations, and she exhibited an unusual stubbornness and temper when she does not get her way. The woman who says she was raped by the defendant blasted Hillary in 2014, accusing her of intentionally lying about her in court documents. "Hillary Clinton took me through hell," she told the Daily Beast. 18. Hill cashes in Iranian fundraising. Former Clinton fundraiser Hassan Nemazi received a 12-year prison sentence in 2010. As WND recently reported, Hillary received funds from an arm of the Iranian government and hired a convicted Iranian-American multimillionaire with ties to Tehran as her national campaign finance director in 2008. The Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation accepted $30,000 between April 2005 and March 2006 and another contribution of between $25,000 and $50,000 in 2008 from the New York-based Alavi Foundation, which U.S. government prosecutors have identified as an arm of the Iranian government. For her 2008 presidential campaign, Clinton hired Hassan Nemazi as her national campaign finance director, who was known for his efforts to normalize relations with the theocratic Iranian regime. In 2010, Nemazi pleaded guilty to running a Ponzi scheme in which he obtained $292 million in fraudulent loans. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison. In his explosive bestseller, Clinton Cash, Peter Schweitzer follows the Clinton money trail, revealing the connection between their personal fortune, their close personal friends, the Clinton Foundation, foreign nations, and some of the highest ranks of government. Rachel Ehrenfeld, director of the American Center for Democracy, spelled out the problem with the Clinton Foundation receiving funds from the Alavi Foundation in a January 5, 2009, article published by Forbes. Alavi's contribution, in 2008, to Clinton came just 2 days after the Treasury Department also designated Alavi's partner, the New York-based Assa Corporation, as a terrorist entity, and the New York Southern District's attorney seized and forfeited its assets, Ehrenfeld wrote. 19. Clinton Foundation, scandals keep coming. As WND reported, the Clintons appear to have siphoned off tens of millions of dollars annually from funds the Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation has received from a United Nations-sponsored program that uses levies on airline tickets to help HIV/AIDS victims in the Third World, charges Wall Street analyst and investor Charles Ortel. The Clinton Foundation also reportedly distributed useless drugs to AIDS patients in Third World countries. Although Hillary was appointed to the board of directors of the Clinton Foundation in 2013, after she had resigned as Secretary of State, Ortel contends she is complicit in what he has described as systematic financial fraud warranting a criminal investigation. After months of tedious investigation, Ortel has concluded the foundation has filed financial and tax forms that were materially misleading, incomplete and in error to enrich the Clintons and their close associates. Ortel alleges Hillary advanced an inurement scheme, enriching oneself through a non-profit organization, in complicity with her husband by positioning various key associates within the Clinton Foundation structure while she served as U.S. Senator from New York and subsequently as Secretary of State under President Obama. Ongoing analysis of legally required public disclosures reveals that while Mrs. Clinton served as director, the Clinton Foundation and its principal constituent elements filed false and materially misleading tax returns with the IRS and with other governmental authorities for multiple years, Ortel charges in his second report on alleged Clinton Foundation mismanagement. As WND also recently reported, based on Ortel's findings, a prominent lawyer and a top government watchdog in the nation's capital are calling for the Clinton Foundation to be shut down. In April, the New York Times reported, cash flowed to Clinton Foundation as Russians pressed for control of uranium company. Hillary has said, "I am very proud of the work the foundation does, but just 9% of the foundation's money went to charity in 2013. Fox News' John Stossel noted, Charity Navigator, the biggest charity rating service, won't even list the Clinton Foundation in its rankings. This is repulsive. If a Republican candidate ran a charity that did that, it would be a scandal. But the Clintons must be immune." WND reported Sunday that before Hillary completed her first year as President Obama's Secretary of State, Ortel calculates that $17 million went missing from Clinton Foundation financial reports. The New York Post recently reported Hillary's former chief of staff and counselor, Cheryl Mills, knows where the bodies are buried in many Clinton scandals, has been at Hillary's side since the 1990s, and has a long track record of hiding Clinton documents. According to the Post, Hillary gave her the job of identifying and preserving all emails that could potentially be federal records. The Post added, and, presumably, deleting. Mills, who has officially been accused of perjury and obstruction of justice, is a key member of the Clinton Foundation board. 20. Benghazi, 4 American lives lost. On September 11, 2012, while Hillary was Secretary of State, Islamic militants attacked a U.S. special mission in Benghazi, Libya, and murdered U.S. Ambassador J. Christopher Stevens and U.S. Foreign Service Information Management Officer Sean Smith. 2 CIA contractors, Tyrone Woods and Glenn Doherty, were also killed. In the months leading up to the attack, Hillary's State Department cut security in Libya. Senator Ron Johnson, Republican Wisconsin, accused Hillary of dereliction of duty that led to the deaths of the 4 Americans. The State Department not only failed to honor repeated requests for additional security, but instead actually reduced security in Libya, Johnson wrote in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Although no one can say with certainty, I firmly believe a relatively small contingent of armed military guards would have prevented the attack, and those 4 lives would not have been lost. In The Real Benghazi Story, What the White House and Hillary Don't Want You to Know, New York Times best-selling author Aaron Klein provides shocking details about the central role Hillary Clinton actually played in the scandal. As WND reported, a security decision finalized personally by Hillary may have unwittingly doomed the Americans in Benghazi. Hillary herself signed waivers that allowed the facility to be legally occupied, since it did not meet the minimum official security standards set by the State Department. The waiver legally allowed the CIA annex to be housed in a location about 1 mile from the U.S. Special Mission. According to accounts from Benghazi survivors, the delayed response time by those at the CIA annex may have cost the lives of Stevens and the 3 other Americans killed at the special mission. If the CIA annex had been co-located with the U.S. Special Mission, a rapid response team would have been on site during the initial assault in which Stevens was killed. Clinton's waiver allowed the CIA annex to be housed at a separate location. As WND also reported, State Department emails show Clinton knew while the attack was underway that it was being carried out by terrorists. Judicial Watch has obtained previously classified documents from the U.S. Department of Defense and the Department of State revealing that DoD almost immediately reported that the attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya, was planned and carried out by al-Qaeda and Muslim Brotherhood-linked terrorists. A federal court ordered the government to hand over more than 100 pages of previously secret documents that showed then-Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and other senior Obama officials were given reports within hours of the September 11, 2012, attack. In those memos, the DoD described details of a plan 10 days in advance to kill as many Americans as possible. Nonetheless, Hillary falsely blamed it on rage and violence over an awful internet video, when she spoke at a ceremony at Andrews Air Force Base on September 14, 2012, as the remains of the 4 Americans were returned to the U.S. To this day, Representative Trey Gowdy, RSC, says the State Department has failed to comply with requests for information about Benghazi. 21. Peter Franklin Paul, another Hillary friend, goes to prison. As WND reported, Hillary was named in a lawsuit brought by Peter Franklin Paul for allegedly directing to her 2000 Senate campaign an illegal, in-kind contribution from Paul that included a fundraiser at the exclusive Spago restaurant in Beverly Hills, a tea hosted at the Beverly Hills home of socialite Cynthia Gershman, and a lavish, A-list, million-dollar-plus Hollywood gala honoring Bill Clinton. At the trial of Clinton's finance director for the 2000 senatorial campaign, David Rosen, the government told the jury Paul personally gave more than $1.2 million to produce the events. Paul, a former business partner of Spider-Man creator Stan Lee who sued Bill for fraud and accused Hillary of hiding nearly $2 million in Senate campaign donations, alleged they sabotaged the media company he formed with Lee to get out of a $17 million agreement made with Bill Clinton to serve as an international promoter for the company after he left the White House. Paul was indicted in June 2001 for manipulating the price of the stock in his company, Stan Lee Media, as it was collapsing. A judge determined Paul didn't profit from the attempt to save his company, but he accepted a plea bargain and served 3 years in prison. WND reported in 2012 that Paul charged Attorney General Eric Holder and his Justice Department obstructed justice by reneging on a sentencing agreement. Hillary is carrying out her promise to finally destroy my family to punish me for exposing the corruption that elected her to the Senate, Paul told WND at the time. The Clintons were effusive in their praise of Paul until just days after an August 2000 Hollywood gala, when the Washington Post reported Paul's 1970s criminal convictions in a story that accused the senator of being soft on crime. Clinton continued, however, to quietly solicit money from Paul and sent him letters expressing friendship. Paul has extensive video corroborating his contention he and Hillary spent hours together and sat next to each other at the fundraising events. 22. Watergate, fired for being a liar. Hillary actually played a role in the Watergate saga, and her actions as a young attorney may have set the tone for her career. The 27-year-old Clinton was fired from the staff of the House Judiciary Committee investigating the Watergate scandal in 1974. She was fired by her supervisor, lifelong Democrat Jerry Ziefman, who called her a liar and much worse. She was an unethical, dishonest lawyer, he said. She conspired to violate the Constitution, the rules of the House, the rules of the committee and the rules of confidentiality. Ziefman also refused to give Clinton a letter of recommendation, making her one of only 3 employees he snubbed during his 17-year career. Giftgate, Hillary blasted former Clinton advisor Dick Morris when he alleged in a New York Post article that the former First Lady hadn't disclosed 3 or 4 pricey handbags from designer Judith Lieber worth more than $3,000 each, 5 dresses received from the King of Morocco, one of which Hillary was seen wearing. A gold bracelet Chelsea Clinton accepted in India and other gifts Hillary was given during the Clinton administration. Morris wrote, Hillary Clinton got many expensive and personal gifts during her 8 years as First Lady and never disclosed them. A Clinton aide acknowledged the handbags were given to Hillary, but he said one was received before the inauguration, another was listed on a 1994 disclosure form and others were turned over to the National Archives. He said 4 dresses were returned to the king, and Hillary gave the 5th dress to the National Archives after she wore it. The aide claimed the bracelet was also sent to the National Archives. The Moral Universe of Hillary Clinton. By John Cass. Chicago Tribune. The arc of the moral universe is long, shouted the freshly unindicted Hillary Clinton at a Democratic rally in North Carolina, with President Barack Obama at her side and the FBI behind her in her dust, but it bends toward justice. She nodded in triumphant agreement with herself, her head moving up and down, chin stabbing the air, a righteous bobblehead Hillary reaching for the presidency of the United States. Clinton attributed the phrase to Obama, but he'd taken it from Martin Luther King Jr., who years before had taken it from the abolitionist Theodore Parker, who didn't live to see justice bend, dying before the Civil War. Morality is just a word to some, a word for politicians at rallies to rationalize the grabbing of power. And if there's one thing the Clintons are about, besides lies, it is power. So, if this truly were a moral universe, those words would have turned into wasps in Hillary's mouth. But they didn't. FBI calls Clinton's handling of email extremely careless, but recommends no prosecution. It was a good day for Hillary. She had Obama singing her praises in a battleground state, even promising she'd transform politics for the good. And she wasn't charged with a federal crime. A few hours before, FBI Director James Comey blinked and said he wouldn't recommend criminal charges out of that email scandal of hers, the one where she used a private basement server for her email while she was Secretary of State and dangled unsecured, top-secret information before foreign intelligence hackers. Yet Comey's critique of Clinton's actions was devastating, though offered in measured language. He said there wasn't enough evidence for a criminal charge, but that how she handled the nation's secrets was extremely careless. And point by point, he rebutted claims made by her or her surrogates, so that in the end the portrait that emerged was of Hillary Clinton putting her nation at risk so that she could keep her email private and away from the eyes of her own government and the representatives of the people. To be clear, this is not to suggest that in similar circumstances, a person who engaged in this activity would face no consequences, Comey said. To the contrary, those individuals are often subject to security or administrative sanctions. But that is not what we are deciding now. Yet how can Clinton keep her security clearance now that she's found to have been reckless with national secrets? I don't know how that's possible, which makes running for president somewhat difficult. An extremely careless Hillary Clinton, the FBI's damning non-indictment. Obama has endorsed her and campaigned for her. And he hasn't demanded the head of Attorney General Loretta Lynch, who met secretly with Bill Clinton in a private plane where they talked, Lynch said, primarily of grandchildren in golf. Any young federal prosecutor who'd meet privately with the spouse of someone under federal investigation would be fired. Any young Foreign Service officer who'd dare put government secrets on a private basement email server, where they could easily be hacked by Russian, Chinese or other intelligence services, would be dismissed, if not prosecuted. And they'd never be able to keep their security clearance. But Clinton will keep hers. If it is taken away from her, it would be an affirmation that she's not trustworthy enough. And politically, the Democrats wouldn't like that. And all that begs the second question, are the Clintons above the law? Hillary's problem is that most Americans, I think, believe they are above the law. Republicans hate the Clintons for this, perhaps because Richard Nixon played the same immoral game and was caught and ruined, while the Clintons prosper and swim in treasure. And many Democrats appreciate Clinton's cunning in the service of their party. Email issue to linger for Hillary Clinton until Election Day. If there's one benefit to the Republicans out of all this is that Hillary Clinton remains the presumptive Democratic nominee. Hillary is about the only Democrat against whom Republican Donald Trump would have a chance. If she'd been charged, Democrats would have had to call on Vice President Joe Biden. But to clean him up, they'd be forced to offer awkward and embarrassing defenses of the stupid and ridiculous things Biden has said. Hillary has said plenty of stupid things herself about her email issue, lies mostly, and this was clear from the Comey statement. The Clinton way is to deny, deny, deny until the lies are uncovered, and then to say that the new information is just old news. But the new information coming from Comey is devastating, at least to anyone with the capacity for shame. She didn't tell the truth early on about using only one email device for convenience. She used several, Comey said. She insisted no classified information was put on her server. Comey said that more than 100 classified documents were out there, available to foreign hackers. Bill Clinton had a multi-billion-dollar foundation that accepted contributions from questionable foreign sources and grew to gargantuan size when his wife was Secretary of State. Comey didn't say a word about the Clinton Foundation, which reportedly is still under investigation. In the universe of the Clintons, politicians can invoke morality after being caught in lies and not even blush. For Bill and Hillary, it's all about bending justice. A version of this article appeared in print on July 6, 2016, in the news section of the Chicago Tribune with the headline, "Where's the Morality in Clinton's Moral Universe? The Dangerous Democrat Agenda. Gun Control. An old method used by Stalin, Mao Zedong, Gaddafi, Pol Pot, Kim Jong-il, Kim Jong-un, Idi Amin, Castro, and other dictators, to establish their dictatorships and prolong their existence. Control of those who have weapons and ban the people from arming themselves to avoid an uprising and the emergence of another revolution in arms. Not only for the protection of criminals and thugs but also for the government itself. Alliance with enemies. Example, Iran, Cuba, Vietnam, etc. Ancient method that used Roman emperors and even Hitler himself for the domain of territories and expansion of their ideology. In the case of Iran, a historical enemy of the United States and very dangerous for its eagerness to develop nuclear weapons, pretending to take control of the region is a little naive. You cannot define the true purpose, but what does seem to be clear is that they are demonstrating their interest in expanding the Islamic culture to the West, and their leftist, socialist ideology, called for them, progressives, as fulfilling their covenant of negotiation in collaboration with those who finance their campaigns. Obamacare. Method of control over the population, and a new step towards the New World Order. The next step would have been the invisible microchip that they would all place as a means of insurance. In the words of Obama himself. Which would be the prelude to the Antichrist, the mark of the beast. Changes in Constitution. Gun control is only the beginning of the constitutional changes of the Democrat agenda, violating the Second Amendment issued in 1789 and enacted in 1791, the 14th on citizenship, and the 25th on empowering the President on the law. The First Amendment would also be in danger because freedom of expression was controlled and limited during Obama's period and would continue to be in case another Democrat wins, most importantly, the 22nd Amendment that gives the limitation to the President to only 2 periods of 4 years. These points of interest cannot be confirmed with certainty, but in some statements made by Obama and Democratic candidates suggested specific and big changes in these aspects. Remember that in the Constitution changes were already made by repealing the 18th Amendment, the dry law, and creating a new amendment, the 21st. Legality of immorality. With this has begun the degeneration of customs and morality of American society and culture. You already know what we are talking about. The truth is that this nation was founded by Christian pilgrims from Europe and rulers born on American soil with principles and values such as Washington, Jefferson, Franklin, Adams, Abraham Lincoln, etc. That has led to being the most blessed nation on earth, serving as a blessing to other nations, emerging as the first world power, and an example of progress and wellness for all nations. Sins curses the nation, and that was well known to the fathers of the country. Legalization of abortion. Although the voluntary termination of pregnancy was legalized on January 22, 1973, there were certain restrictions in some states, which already in 2016 is completely at the will of the mother and without the consent of the father. This is another sin that is affirmed, turning the crime of murdering a human being into something legal. Any woman in gestation has the right to take away the right to a human being to live, even on the last day of pregnancy. Muslim refugees. This is the most dangerous because there is no control over those who are really persecuted in Syria, Iraq, and other countries in the Middle East. This will provoke the infiltration of thousands of Islamic terrorists, as has happened in the past. Recall that 19 terrorists ended the lives of more than 3,000 people on September 11, 2001, including refugees living in the USA. The same has happened in Europe, which receives freely any number of refugees from Islamic countries, which have created chaos, and committed crimes, and terrorist acts throughout Europe. In other massacres, we have seen that 1 or 2 people have killed 30 to 50 people in a single day. Rape, vandalism, destruction, and crime have increased all around the European countries provoked by Muslim immigrants. The Muslim population would increase, and extremism would gain more strength and power because their goal is world domination. President Obama, who belongs to the Muslim Brotherhood of America, was clear of the strategic plans of this society that seeks to govern in the United States. All the roads of progressive thinking lead to socialism. Fidel Castro. December 2, 1976. Islamic extremism. Every religion is radical, if not, that religion would be a simple tradition. Today the word radical is often mentioned as something bad, exaggerated, or fanatical, and it is not like that. Radical is an adjective that is used to describe something complete, and if something is not complete, therefore it is not what it seems to be. As Shakespeare said, to be or not to be, or we are not. To be radical is to be complete, it is what the Bible describes as integral. Therefore, the radical is the integral person in his principles, his faith, and his political or critical position. If a religious person is not radical, his religion, his faith or his lifestyle is a simple tradition. Most people who say, "I am Catholic," say it because it is their tradition, not because they really are. Many Latinos think they are Catholic just because they are Latino, or because they believe in the Virgin, saints, and images, but they never go to Mass. If perhaps once or twice a year, they do not do their sacraments, they do not comply with the ordinances or the dogmas of their Catholic religion, etc. The same goes for Arabs and Jews. Some call themselves Muslims and pray to Allah once a day perhaps, others say they are Jews or Judaizers because they pray to Jehovah and believe in the Torah. True Muslims believe and follow the Quran, are radical in their faith and way of life. True Muslims are jihadists, they have a sovereign and only law, the Sharia law, and believe in the holy war which prophetically, according to their beliefs, must be fulfilled at present. Do not be naive believing that there are moderate Muslims, peaceful and modern. Those that you believe are so, are immoral, according to their religion, they live a double moral life. And this happens in all religions. People live on appearances and are not what they say they are. Islam is radical, it must be radical, and the true Muslims are radical. Many Muslims do not mention the word jihad, and they refer to jihadists as terrorists, traitors, enemies of civilization, savage barbarians, thirsty for blood, who hate other Muslims, but many say it out of the mouth or do not even know the Quran very well. The Quran is terror, it is blood, death, and judgment, and Muhammad was a bloodthirsty barbarian. Unlike the Quran, the Bible, as we all know, has a New Testament, which, despite the brutal, bloody, and apparently ruthless law of Moses in the Old Testament, we do not live under that law, since Christ came, died and rose from death so that everyone who believes in him may not perish but may have eternal life. John 3 verse 16. Since then we live under grace, the law of the Spirit of life in Christ, the law of reconciliation, the law of love. If there is an Old Testament in the Bible, it is for us to know the real and serious meaning of sin, and as God, the Creator, sees it, rejects it and judges it. The Old Testament strongly judged the sin of Israel, the nation chosen by God to set apart for him in holiness and justice. But if you read the Old Testament well, especially the book of Deuteronomy and Numbers, you will realize that it was impossible for a human being not to sin, because Jehovah was radical and demanding with his people. Back in those days the men, through the law of Moses, to redeem their sins, could only do it through sacrificial, human, rituals. These sacrifices had to be done every week, so God did not take their sins into account, disobedience. But thanks to God, who is a God of love and mercy, he sent his Son, God himself made flesh, as a perfect sacrifice, only once, to redeem us from that curse of the law, to give us life, to be free from religion, dogmas, worldly traditions, forgiving us forever, and finding grace through Jesus Christ, praying in his name to forgive us every day, for what we have done wrong or we have not done, according to his perfect will. Loving and forgiving each other. Therefore, the Quran is a plagiarism of the Bible, a book written by one man, while the Bible was written by 42 chosen men, since there must be more than one witness, in order to make a testament. And God is not one person, but three, in three different states, being the same God. We can conclude that the Quran itself is a single testament with only one testimony by a single person. Does it make sense that God acted like this? Does God want to confuse human beings with totally different religions? Do you think it is logical that there must be more than one witness in order to be a trial? Do you think is right, God being so cruel and requires his creatures, other men, to kill those who oppose him, a God of love who holds the planet, and the universe, and has mercy every day of us, despite our crimes and sins? The human beings were not given the power or authority to kill, not even to judge another and condemn him to death. That is up to him alone, in his time, when the dispensation or time of grace, in which we live now comes to an end. For that, God uses and will use the same Mother Nature, the same physical creation of the universe, because the time will come that this planet will be removed for God to bring us new heavens and new earth in the fulfillment of the times. Revelation 21. Does it make sense that God brings so much confusion if is really God himself, both for Muslims, Christians and Jews? If the Quran also mentions Jesus several times and precisely as a prophet sent from God, how then Islam hates both Christians and Jews? There is no doubt that it is a bad replica, an excuse to use religion as a form of domination, conquest and establish a dictatorship or religious reign unique in the world. There is no worse blind than the one who does not want to see. I invite you to make your own comparisons and analyze, reading the Bible and the Quran. I do not intend to make an exhaustive and detailed explanation of the history of Islam, of Muhammad, or of all the religious wars that Islam has been involved in at all times. I simply want to discuss in this chapter why Islamic extremism, radical Islam, is another reason why Donald Trump was elected president by voters in most states. They want a president to give them security and not allow religious fanatics to come and impose on us how to live, and whom to believe or worship. They were tired of politicians naive, corrupt, and political correctness. Sovereignty and freedom are very important for Americans. The Islamists have not come to this country to integrate but to dominate, according to their Quran. As I said earlier, Obama left us a bad legacy, allied with religious dictatorships and communists, historical enemies of the United States. Obama himself said that he was a Muslim, whether by tradition or conviction. Defined ideologically socialist, of a progressive left. No matter what is called or the color with which it is disguised, the ideology of the left is the same, which follows the Marxist philosophy of implementing a communist system. While Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State for the Obama administration and continued with the same policy of association with religious and communist dictatorships, allowing extremists with refugee status to continue entering the United States to commit crimes, massacres, or terrorist acts against the defenseless population who lives in a free country with rights for all. A right that we were already losing by giving rights to others who think and act differently, voters were not going to allow it. We all want the best future for our children, not to live with the fear of going to public places, to celebrate, to go to concerts, stores, churches, etc. We do not want Sharia law in America, a law that violates human rights, a law that entitles some to abuse others, to kill whoever thinks and is different, who enslaves and mistreats women, and abuses minors. Not only jihadists demand Sharia law in America, but all Muslims claim it. They want to have their own territories with their own laws, but even more, they want to impose it all around the country. The official news does not show what is happening in Europe, where they have already allowed these extremist groups to have their own territories with their own laws, without caring about the rights of the abused and oppressed by these fanatics. Even so, their own citizens live with terror every day of going out on the streets, having a happy social life, celebrating, and walking like free citizens in a civilization of right and progress. Women cannot go out alone because they fear being raped and abused. What kind of life is that? Do you want the same in America? Read the Quran, learn, know, and do not be fooled. I will make it easier for you. Read the Quran in 65, 4, 2400 hours 13 rape, marry, divorce, and abuse of minors. 4, 3. 2, 4, 34, 5 hours 89 minutes, 33:50, 58, 3, 70:30 to have sex slaves and slaves to work. 33:57 Kill everyone who insults Islam and his Prophet Muhammad. 8:12, 47, 4 Crucify and amputate non-Muslims. 9, 111 Killing non-Muslims to guarantee they will receive 72 virgins in heaven. 2, 217, 4 hours 89 minutes Kill anyone who abandons Islam. 8:12, 47, 4 Decapitate non-Muslims. 9, 5 Kill and die for Allah and Islam. 8:12, 8 hours 60 minutes Terrorize non-Muslims. Chapter 8 Stealing non-Muslims. 326, 16, 106 Lying to strengthen Islam. 2, 216 Fight against non-Muslims, even if you do not want to. 551 Not having non-Muslim friends. 5 hours 60 minutes, 716, 16, 106 Call non-Muslims pigs and monkeys. 98, 6 Treat non-Muslims as vile creatures who do not deserve mercy. 4, 101 Treat non-Muslims as enemies. 929 Kill non-Muslims who do not convert to Islam. You tell me whether these texts, which are some of the commandments of the Prophet Muhammad, are peaceful and harmless. There is no worse blind than the one who does not want to see. Remember that Quran does not have a New Testament, so, it is all about one testament made by one person. God gave the law to Moses for the Jews only. Although the punishment was hard for the transgressors, adultery, theft, crime, blasphemy, and rebellion against parents, were sometimes punishable by death. It was the way God showed how jealous He is of His commandments, and that ultimately it was impossible for man to fulfill all the commandments of the law, which were not just 10 commandments. In ancient times God used men like Joshua, Gideon, Samson, David, etc., to fight against their enemies, the pagan peoples who hated Israel. But clearly, God wanted this to be written by revelation, to be taught to the people of Israel for generations, the principles of His word and the main commandments. The 5th commandment is clear and says, "You shall not kill." If God has created us with free will, why do we want to be judges and impose on others a way of thinking? That is a dictatorship. God gave us a new law with the coming of Christ as Savior, who was the living sacrifice of the Lamb without blemish, immolated for our sins and disobedience, the law of the Spirit, which Jesus taught that we should not only love our brethren, but even our natural enemies, because in reality, our enemies are not flesh and blood, but spiritual and invisible. Ephesians 6 verse 12, For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world and the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, in this time or dispensation of grace, love is above all things, and the faith that pleases God is the one that works out of love. God created man to have a relationship with Him, man created religion to have dominion and control over others. Jesus gave His life for us and taught us that we should forgive and love our neighbor, our companion, whether being someone we do not know and different from us. You have heard that it was said, eye for eye, and tooth for tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. Matthew 5:38-48. The wall to secure the border. Although this is a campaign promise that does not please many, the truth is that it is one of the reasons why Trump was elected in most states. The enemies of America, of civilization, of the free world, of capitalism, are not a few. And as I said before, there is nothing wrong with immigration, the fight is simply against 1. Terrorism, which will use all possible means to enter to USA, and the border is one of them. 2. Drug trafficking, another bloody enemy that penetrates the border, putting the lives of U.S. citizens at risk, a form of enrichment for some, which causes the misfortune of others who live that lifestyle alienated from illusion and fantasy, which is the drug, causing deaths due to consumption, crimes, accidents, and destruction, etc. How do we end drug trafficking if we leave the border open? 3. Human trafficking is another of the enemies that puts the lives of many people at risk, especially women and children, a method also to enrich some transporting or entering illegal aliens. 4. Organized crime, criminal gangs, assassins, and hit men. 5. Identity theft. Most people who enter the border illegally, to come to live in the United States, do so by bringing false documents. Some of them buy the documents inside the U.S., while others bring it from Mexico. Do you think it is right these people use the identity of another to live illegally in the country? Even if some illegals prefer not to pay false documents, there must be control of any people living in the country. If someone enters the U.S. legally, with documents, passport and visa, there are many ways to get residence within the U.S. and not necessarily in an illegal way. They can marry a citizen, they can get a work contract, an extension of their visa for family matters, or a contribution they made or are capable of making to society. You just need to fill out the papers or hire an immigration lawyer. But if all the poor of Latin America or the world in general, want to come to live in the United States, and on top of that, want to depend on and live from the state, there would be no resources for all. Citizens born here or legalized would run out of benefits, because someone who entered illegally took the lead. A government cannot support all those in need. Otherwise, assuming that of the almost 8 billion inhabitants of the planet, 1 billion would like to come to live in the United States. Will we let them freely enter to live and work? In fact, there would be neither work nor resources for everyone. We must be aware of the reality in which we live. Life cannot be resolved for everyone, and each government must deal with its citizens. For the USA it costs less money and resources to help the poor country reach democracy and develop the industries, improving their economy and quality of life, than receiving all the poor people who want to live in the USA, being refugees or not. All those who advocate an open border, a border without a wall or division, the celebrities, stars, personalities of the art and entertainment industry, journalists, politicians, activists, sociopath anarchists, socialists, communists or anti-capitalists have a wall or fence around their houses or properties. So, what is the problem of protecting the border, especially now that we have more dangerous and powerful enemies? The wall is to make people aware that they cannot pass. A visual image that represents a division because it is a foreign country, is to cut personnel costs, salaries, logistics material, weapons, tools, and daily expenses that the border produces with surveillance staff and officers. The wall is a one-time expense and taxes would be charged to all those who pass through border customs to cover the costs of its construction. The wall is for the protection of the citizens and families that live here legally. Does that make sense? Of course. The other funny thing is that when Bill Clinton started to build this wall in 1992, nobody shouted, nobody wept, nobody campaigned, nobody expressed openly, there was no extreme news every day accusing the government, there were no demands, nor was the artistic platform used to express or spit out their distaste for that action. Why do they now come with so much fury against a conservative government? Why hate and slander? Why do they exaggerate and torment so much? Why is sanity lost? Why do they want to be so naive or abnormal? Knowing that now the enemies of America have multiplied. These protesters become vicious, they become paranoid, unreasonable, and fanatical extremists. I would say more, I would say that they are extremely racist, because racism exists in all races, and the proof of that is when Clinton is a white liberal, Obama was a black liberal, but Trump is a white conservative. In case you do not know, there are currently about 70 walls or fences that divide borders between countries. The hope of making America great again. This was Donald Trump's campaign motto, but it was not just a motto, it was not pure words or a usual political promise. Donald Trump said and demonstrated how he would do it. He had a plan for a long time, in which his goal was to run as a candidate to achieve the presidency, to fix the damage caused by the leftists, the Obama administration and George W. Bush himself. And frankly, we are living it, it is fulfilling its words, it is recovering the economy by leaps and bounds, despite the internal enemies, the campaign of hatred and division, the opposition of the media, artists, athletes, and hollow heads or sociopaths, despite the slander and the bad reputation they give him, despite the hurricanes Charlie, Irma, Maria, who left so many disasters in several states and Puerto Rico and the biggest fire in history in the state of California. In addition to other natural disasters in other countries, the United States has helped and is committed to giving them a hand. In the chapter, Achievements of Donald Trump in his first year in office, you can read all better. Thank God, America will recover and become great again, a nation of blessing for the world, guardian protector and aid for developing nations, for civilization, for science, technology, health and education of a world that progresses despite internal and external enemies, of hatred and setbacks. America chose Trump, and democracy won. In summary, the reasons why Donald J. Trump was elected President of the United States of America for the period of 2016 to 2020 initially are the following. 1. Donald Trump is the president elected by God's will, as was Barack Obama, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton and all the other presidents of the United States and of the entire world. It was God's will that dictators like Castro, Maduro, Chavez, Gaddafi, Mao Zedong, Stalin, Hitler, Mussolini, etc. were also rulers. Some for the judgment of the nations, so that they may turn to their Creator, others to bless them, and others simply to fulfill the prophecies. There is nothing we can do, just pray for those who are in power to make life enjoyable or make life impossible for us. 1 Timothy 2 verses 1-3 I urge, then, first, that petitions, prayers, intercession, and thanksgiving be made for all people, for kings and all those in authority, that we may live peaceful and quiet lives in all godliness and holiness. This is good, and pleases God our Savior. In the first chapter of this book, I explain the most important reasons why Trump is the will of God in this historical and chaotic time that we live in America and the whole world. 2. The fake news. People got tired of the Democrat campaign based only on discrediting Trump, promoting hatred and violence, without evidence or reason, and a solid or real plan to protect the citizens and to recover the economy. 3. The legacy left by Obama, which Trump is trying to fix. In terms of economy, national security, health, immigration, terrorism, treaties and bilateral alliances, prestige and morality. 4. The bad testimony of Hillary Clinton, who would continue Obama's policy, plus her political crimes, corruption, treason, alleged murders, negligence as Secretary of State, lies and perjury, immorality, insults to voters who did not accept her, and her policy describing them as deplorable, theft of votes from his Democrat opponent, etc., etc. 5. International terrorism, domestic terrorism, and radical Islam. 6. National security and border protection. 7. The increase in debt and a Trump plan that convinced the voters to eliminate it little by little. Cut taxes or tax reform, cuts in the federal government, cuts in government control, to reduce state spending and put more money in the pocket of taxpayers, families who work and strive every day for a paycheck, and to small businesses. 8. The increase of the benefits to the veterans of war. 9. The hope of recovering America, its values, principles, freedom, peace, security, development, and culture. 10. Maintain the capitalist system as the economic and social model that guarantees progress, prosperity, development and wellness. God bless America. Brief biography of Donald Trump. Donald John Trump, born June 14, 1946, is the 45th and current President of the United States, in office since January 20, 2017. Before entering politics, he was a businessman and television personality. Trump was born in the New York City borough of Queens. He earned an economics degree from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. He followed his grandmother Elizabeth and father Fred in running the family real estate company, which he named the Trump Organization, from 1971 until his 2017 inauguration. Trump's real estate career focused on building or renovating skyscrapers, hotels, casinos, and golf courses. He has also started multiple side ventures, marketed real estate and various products with his name and co-authored several books. He produced and hosted The Apprentice, a reality television game show about business, from 2003 to 2015. According to Forbes, he was the world's 544th richest person as of May 2017, with an estimated net worth of $3.5 billion. Trump had expressed interest in politics as early as 1987. He entered the 2016 presidential race as a Republican and defeated 16 opponents in the primaries. Commentators described his political positions as populist, protectionist, and nationalist. His campaign received extensive free media coverage. Many of his public statements were controversial or false. Trump won the general election on November 8, 2016 against Democratic opponent Hillary Clinton. He became the oldest and wealthiest person ever to assume the presidency, the first without prior military or government service, and the fifth to have won the election despite losing the popular vote. His election and policies have sparked numerous protests. In domestic policy, Trump has sought, so far without success, to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. He appointed Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court. He ordered a travel ban on citizens from several Muslim-majority countries, citing security concerns. A revised version of the ban was implemented after legal challenges. In foreign policy, he withdrew the United States from the Trans-Pacific Partnership and from the Paris Agreement on climate change, partially reversed the Cuban thaw, pressured North Korea over the acceleration of their missile tests and nuclear program, and recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Ancestry. Trump's ancestors originated from the German village of Karlstadt in the Palatinate on his father's side, and from the Outer Hebrides in Scotland on his mother's side. His grandparents and his mother were born in Europe. His mother's grandfather was also christened Donald. Trump's paternal grandfather, Friedrich Trump, first emigrated to the United States in 1885 at the age of 16 and became a citizen in 1892. He amassed a fortune operating boomtown restaurants and boarding houses in the Seattle area and the Klondike region of Canada during its Gold Rush. On a visit to Karlstadt, he met Elizabeth Christ and married her in 1902. The couple settled in New York permanently in 1905. Frederick died from influenza during the 1918 pandemic. Trump's father Fred was born in 1905 in the Bronx. Fred started working with his mother in real estate when he was 15, shortly after his father's death. Their company, Elizabeth Trump and Son, was primarily active in the New York boroughs of Queens and Brooklyn. Fred eventually built and sold thousands of houses, barracks, and apartments. The company later became the Trump Organization after Donald Trump took over in 1971. Trump's mother Mary Ann was born in Tong, Lewis, Scotland. At age 18 in 1930, she emigrated to New York, where she worked as a maid. Fred and Mary were married in 1936 and raised their family in Queens. Trump's uncle John was an electrical engineer, physicist, and inventor. He worked as a professor at MIT from 1936 to 1973. During World War II, he was involved in radar research for the Allies and helped design X-ray machines that were used to treat cancer. Early life and education. Donald Trump was born on June 14, 1946, at the Jamaica Hospital Medical Center, Queens, New York City. He was the fourth of 5 children born to Frederick Trump, 1905 to 1999, and Mary Ann Trump, née McLeod, 1912 to 2000. Trump grew up in the Jamaica Estates neighborhood of Queens. He attended the Kew Forest School from kindergarten through 7th grade. At age 13, he enrolled in the New York Military Academy, a private boarding school, after his parents discovered that he had made frequent trips into Manhattan without their permission. In August 1964, Trump began his higher education at Fordham University. After 2 years, he transferred to the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, because it offered one of the few real estate studies departments in United States academia at the time. In addition to his father, Trump was inspired by Manhattan developer William Zeckendorf, vowing to be even bigger and better. While at Wharton, he worked at the family business, Elizabeth Trump and Son, graduating in May 1968 with a Bachelor of Science degree in economics. Trump did not enlist or get drafted during the Vietnam War. While in college from 1964 to 1968, he obtained 4 student deferments. In 1966, he was deemed fit for service based upon a military medical examination, and in 1968 was briefly classified as fit by a local draft board. In September of that year, he was given a medical deferment, which he later attributed to heel spurs. In 1969, he received a high number in the draft lottery, which gave him a low probability to be called to military service. Books. Trump ha participado en la escritura de los siguientes libros. Trump, The Art of the Deal, 1987. Trump, Surviving at the Top, 1990. Trump, The Art of Survival, 1991. Trump, The Art of the Comeback, 1997. Trump, How to Get Rich, 2004. The Way to the Top, The Best Business Advice I Ever Received, 2004. Trump, Think Like a Billionaire, Everything You Need to Know About Success, Real Estate, and Life, 2004. Trump, The Best Golf Advice I Ever Received, 2005. Why We Want You to Be Rich, 2 Men, 1 Message, 2006, with Robert Kiyosaki. Think Big and Kick Ass in Business and Life, 2007, with Bill Zanker. The America We Deserve, 2000, with Dave Shiflett. Trump, The Best Real Estate Advice I Ever Received, 100 Top Experts Share Their Strategies, 2007. Trump 101, The Way to Success, 2007. Trump Never Give Up, How I Turned My Biggest Challenges into Success, 2008. Trump Tower, 2011, with Jeffrey Robinson. Midas Touch, Why Some Entrepreneurs Get Rich and Why Most Don't, 2011, with Robert Kiyosaki. Time to Get Tough, Making America #1 Again. Think Like a Champion, An Informal Education in Business and Life. The End. The Author's Biography. Milco Baute Lopez, a Cuban writer, editor, and educator of international acclaim, has woven a fascinating trajectory over the decades. His pen, infused with passion and creativity, has been a beacon of knowledge and artistic expression since 1992 when he began enlightening the world with his insightful articles. The most significant chapter of his life was written on December 10, 1995, when Milco crossed borders and oceans to settle in the United States. This land of opportunities became his new home, and in 2001, with a profound sense of belonging, he embraced U.S. citizenship, merging his Cuban roots with his love for cultural diversity. The pursuit of knowledge and wisdom has always been a constant in Milco's life. This passionate autodidact, eager to nourish his intellect, embarked on a remarkable academic journey. He studied philosophy through an online course offered by the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, and in 2016, he successfully completed his academic journey, becoming a graduate of this venerable institution. Milco Baute is not only an accomplished writer but also a prolific author. From 2008 to the present, he has given life to more than 100 books, showcasing his literary talent in both English and Spanish. In addition to his personal work, Milco plays a pivotal role in the publishing industry as an editor, writer, and distributor, collaborating with other authors to bring their stories to the world. One cannot fully grasp the rich palette of Milco's experiences without mentioning his technical background as a graduate in Cuba in 1986 as a technician in electrical power systems. This distinguished profession led him to practice his craft with skill for over 2 decades before his passion for writing and education led him down new paths. In summary, the life of Milco Baute Lopez is a symphony of creativity, perseverance, and dedication. His journey from the Cuban shores to the borders of the United States, through academic exploration and prolific literary production, is a testament to his unwavering spirit and commitment to cultural enrichment and knowledge in all its forms. Audiobook created by Baute Production Publisher. Tampa, Florida, United States of America. Telephone number, 813-693-8879. Email, authors@usa.com.